Welcome to the Sleepy Scientist. It's lovely to have you here tonight. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from this evening? A quiet bedroom, a cozy sofa, a gentle train ride home? Wherever you are, I hope you're comfortable and ready to drift slowly into something calm. Tonight, we're wandering into the hidden world of fungi. The quiet threads under the soil, the soft networks woven through forests, the strange and ancient life that shapes the world in ways most people never notice. If you enjoy these peaceful explorations and would like to hear more, a like and a subscribe really help this sleepy little channel float along. And to those already subscribed, thank you. Truly, your support means more than you know. Please do tap the notification bell as well so you never miss the next gentle upload. I will try not to make tonight's topic so interesting that it keeps you wide awake, though if it does, at least you might drift off later, knowing something new about the world beneath your feet. So let's settle in together. What hidden life is moving quietly through the ground around you right now? Fungi have shaped the world far longer than forests have stood, and their story begins in places most eyes never look. They slip through soil in pale, patient threads. They guide roots, soften stone, recycle entire landscapes, and help hold ecosystems together without ever stepping into the light. Their world is older than woodlands, older than towering plants, and older than many of the patterns that define life today. They have been partners to trees, architects of soil, and silent companions to the planet for hundreds of millions of years. Tonight you'll move through that world at an easy pace, following the threads beneath fallen leaves, listening to the slow work happening in darkness, and drifting through the long history of organisms that quietly prepared Earth for everything that followed. There's no pressure to remember every name or hold on to every detail. Just let each part settle gently, the way spores settle on soft ground. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let the story unfold in its own unhurried way. Fungi occupy a place in the living world that feels both familiar and strange, like something halfway between the organisms you already know and something older, quieter, and more mysterious. They do not fit neatly beside plants or animals despite sharing traits with both. Instead, they form their own kingdom, a vast and diverse branch of life that moves through the world in ways that often go unnoticed. Understanding why they stand apart begins with looking closely at how they are built and how they live, because everything about them hints at a lineage that has been shaped by deep time and subtle persistence. A fungal cell begins with a wall made of chitin, the same material that gives insects their delicate armor. This single fact already sets fungi apart from plants, which build their cell walls from cellulose and from animals which do not have walls at all. Chitin offers flexibility and strength, allowing fungal cells to stretch, branch, and slip into spaces far too small for most organisms. Rather than forming rigid structures, fungi grow as threads called hyphae, thin, hollow filaments that extend instantly toward moisture or nutrients. These threads do not grow in straight lines. They curl, fork, and sense their surroundings in soft, exploratory movements, turning the organism into something more like a living map than a singular body. As hyphae spread, they weave together into a structure called mycelium. This mycelium can be small, tucked beneath a fallen leaf, or it can span an entire patch of forest floor. In some species, it can even stretch across many kilometers, disguising its enormity beneath moss, roots, and soil. A single fungus can be both an individual and a network, continually rebuilding itself and shifting its boundaries as the environment changes. This fluid way of living is part of what places fungi in their own kingdom. They do not grow upward toward the sun like plants. They do not move with limbs, muscles, or deliberate action like animals. Instead, they spread into the world quietly, expanding in every direction at once, guided only by chemistry and patience. Their method of feeding is equally unusual. Fungi digest the outside world from the outside. Their hyphae release enzymes, tiny biological tools that dissolve complex materials into simpler forms. These enzymes soften wood, break apart leaves, unravel proteins, and unlock nutrients trapped inside soil or organic matter. Once dissolved, the nutrients flow back through the hyphal threads, allowing the fungus to feed without ever having to engulf or chew anything. It is a slow, steady process, but it gives fungi access to resources that most organisms cannot reach. They slip into deep crevices, narrow gaps, and dense materials, breaking them down from within. This external digestion is another clue that fungi are not plants. Plants produce their own energy from sunlight, drawing it in through leaves and stems. Fungi, like animals, must seek their food outside themselves. They do not photosynthesize. They rely on enzymes to unlock energy from whatever lies around them. Dead wood, fallen leaves, soil rich in organic matter, or even the bodies of other living organisms. In this sense, fungi sit closer to animals on the evolutionary tree than to plants. Some of their genes, metabolic pathways, and cell structures resemble those of animals far more than they resemble those of any plant. The similarities may not be visible on the forest floor, but at the microscopic level the kinship is clear. Yet fungi behave in ways that do not resemble animals either. They have no nervous system, no brain, no organs, and no central structure that controls the whole network. Instead, the entire organism acts as a decentralized whole. A change sensed by one hypha, perhaps a shift in moisture or a trace of nutrients, can influence the behavior of the network without any single thread directing it. Signals move through electrical pulses, chemical gradients, and subtle internal flows. The organism adapts to stress, navigates obstacles, and balances resources across its body without ever needing a central command. This quiet intelligence arises from simple rules applied across enormous numbers of threads, producing behavior that feels both logical and mysterious. The fungal kingdom includes an astonishing range of forms. Some fungi are barely visible, tiny yeasts that float through the air or settle on the skin of fruit. A single yeast cell is so small that thousands could rest on a pinhead, yet their metabolic powers are vast. Yeast can ferment sugars, producing carbon dioxide that makes bread rise and alcohol that shapes wine and beer. These small single-celled fungi carry out transformations that have supported human life for thousands of years. Other fungi form delicate molds, spreading soft, colourful patches across decaying material. Their hyphae move outward like threads of silk, shaping patterns that shift with humidity and temperature. Some molds appear in gentle green layers, others in rich blues, soft whites, or deep blacks. These variations arise from pigments the fungi produce as they grow, each pigment a chemical imprint of the organism's needs and defences. Then there are mushrooms, the brief fruiting forms that appear above ground when conditions are right. A mushroom is not the fungus itself, but a reproductive structure, a temporary body built to release spores into the air. Mushrooms can emerge overnight, rising through soil in shapes that range from simple caps to intricate fans, delicate cups, thick stems, and branching coral-like forms. They persist only a short time before softening and returning to the earth. leaving the hidden mycelium beneath them to continue its quiet work. At the far end of the spectrum stand the forest-spanning giants, the fungi that weave their networks through entire ecosystems. Some live for thousands of years, responding to storms, fires, droughts, and the shifting boundaries of plant communities. These colossal organisms show how fungi can exist, not simply as individual beings, but as living landscapes in their own right. A single network can support, compete with, or influence the roots above it, shaping the health of entire forests through processes invisible to casual observers. This diversity, yeasts, molds, mushrooms, networks that stretch across kilometers, illustrates why fungi form a kingdom of their own. No other group of organisms combines their methods of growth, feeding, reproduction, and adaptation. They occupy a biological middle ground, sharing traits with animals and plants but belonging fully to neither. They consume like animals, grow like plants, and yet behave in ways that are unique to their lineage. What makes this kingdom especially fascinating is how quietly it operates. Fungi rarely draw attention to themselves. They do not announce their presence through movement or sound. They grow in darkness, under bark, inside soil, or deep within decaying wood. If you removed fungi from the world, ecosystems would collapse in silence. Leaves would pile up. Wood would never fully decay. Soil would lose its structure. Plants would struggle to find nutrients. The world would fill with the remnants of life, unable to return to the cycle that renews it. Fungi exist between worlds, between plant and animal, seen and unseen, individual and network. Their kingdom is shaped by patience, subtlety, and adaptability. They do not claim territory with force. They simply arrive, grow, dissolve, and rebuild, creating the conditions that allow life to flourish around them. Understanding this middle kingdom is the first step in seeing how deeply it is woven into everything you know, and once you notice it, the quiet, steady presence of fungi becomes impossible to ignore. Fungal life begins with the thread so fine that it slips through the world almost unnoticed. This thread, called a hypha, is the basic unit of growth for nearly every fungus on Earth. It is a simple structure at first glance, a thin, hollow filament built from flexible walls, yet it carries within it the ability to sense, respond, and expand with a quiet precision that defines the entire kingdom. A fungus does not grow as a single solid body. It grows as thousands, millions, or even trillions of these threads, all branching and reaching outward, creating a living network that can stretch far beyond anything its individual parts could manage alone. A single hypha begins with a tip that is always seeking. This tip senses chemical signals in its surroundings, responding to tiny trails of nutrients, moisture, or decay. Its movements are not sudden or forceful. Instead, it extends gently, pushing forward only when conditions are right. When it encounters a barrier, it curves around it. When it finds a narrow space, it slips through. When it reaches an area rich in nourishment, it branches, forming new tips that continue the slow exploration. Every step is controlled by internal gradients and subtle flows of materials, a choreography that happens without central direction, guided only by the hypha's local environment. As more hyphae grow, they weave together into a structure called mycelium. This mycelium is the true body of the fungus, not the mushroom you might see above ground, but the web hidden beneath it. Mycelium spreads through soil, wood, fallen leaves, and even beneath stones, moving at a pace that can be both slow and surprisingly persistent. A few millimeters a day may not sound like much, but over months and years these threads can fill vast spaces, reshaping the materials they encounter. They follow moisture like soft currents, sensing tiny changes that most organisms would never detect. Hyphae branch repeatedly, creating networks that resemble delicate lace or branching roots, but with a flexibility that no plant or animal can match. The network can be compact or expansive. It can thicken into dense mats or thin out into single strands. It can retreat from harsh conditions or surge into areas filled with nutrients. This ability to shapeshift allows fungi to survive shifts in temperature, dryness, acidity, and the availability of food. When a section of mycelium dries out, the fungus simply withdraws and waits, sending new threads forward when moisture returns. If a patch of soil becomes too dense, the hyphae change direction, finding paths of least resistance. The strength of this thread-based body lies not only in its adaptability, but also in its distributed nature. There is no single point that controls the entire organism. Instead, each hypha makes local decisions based on what it encounters. When thousands of tips explore at once, the fungus gains a form of environmental awareness that emerges from the collective behavior of its parts. If nutrients appear on one side of the network, growth accelerates there. If toxins appear on another side, growth slows or changes direction. This responsiveness gives mycelium a kind of quiet intelligence, not conscious thought, but a capacity to navigate complex landscapes using simple rules applied across countless threads. This pattern becomes more intricate when hyphae fuse together, forming connections that allow nutrients and signals to flow through the network. When one area of the fungus finds a source of food, the rest of the network can benefit. The threads transport sugars, minerals and amino acids through internal channels, delivering them where they are needed. The fungus becomes a single organism made of many exploring branches, all sharing resources and information in a way that resembles the circulation of fluids in animals or the distribution of nutrients in plant roots, yet following rules entirely its own. Soil offers the ideal environment for these threads. When a hypha enters the soil, it encounters a patchwork of particles, grains of sand, fragments of clay, tiny pockets of water, and organic matter in every stage of decay. Hyphae curl around these grains, sometimes wrapping them in soft spirals. They slip between them like threads passing through beads. In these spaces, darkness is constant. Air moves sluggishly. Moisture clings in thin films that coat the mineral surfaces. This is the world where mycelium thrives, moving through it with a patience that matches the slow rhythms of decomposition and renewal. Within decaying wood, hyphae explore tunnels left behind by beetles and other insects. They move into cracks that widen with age. They drift through soft layers of cellulose and lignin, releasing enzymes that dissolve the wood from within. As the wood softens, more hyphae enter, branching and weaving into a dense network that gradually returns the tree to the soil. In this environment, the threads align themselves into patterns shaped by the structure of the wood, following growth rings, tracing the paths of old vessels, and settling into spaces that hold the most moisture. In leaf litter, mycelium grows among curled edges, dried veins, and the fine dust of decomposed organic matter. The threads weave through the layers, binding pieces together, softening them, and gradually transforming them into the richer material that supports plant life. This slow work creates the foundation of fertile soil, built grain by grain, thread by thread, through the constant movement of fungal bodies. The adaptability of hyphae also allows fungi to colonize places far beyond soil and wood. They grow on rocks, drawing nutrients from minerals. They spread across the surfaces of plants, forming mutualistic partnerships that benefit both partners. They inhabit animal bodies, sometimes as harmless companions and sometimes as parasites. Their thread-based nature allows them to adjust easily to each environment, expanding or contracting as needed. No matter the habitat, the pattern remains the same: a quiet reaching outward, a gentle response to microscopic changes, and a continual reshaping of the body as conditions shift. Even the growth of a single hypha is more dynamic than it appears. The tip is constantly rebuilding itself, adding new material as it extends. Behind the tip, the walls thicken and strengthen, giving support to the expanding network. Internal pressure pushes the hypha forward, while enzymes soften the material ahead. It is like watching a soft, patient hand reach into darkness, gently feeling its way through the world. Over time, these tiny movements add up, creating a presence that grows and adapts with remarkable resilience. The movement of the threads can become especially complex when multiple species of fungi grow side by side. Hyphae may compete for space, intertwine, or even exchange signals that influence each other's behavior. In some cases, they form shared networks, linking their bodies into composite structures that benefit each species. In others, they build barriers or release chemicals to protect their territory. All of this happens without conflict in the human sense, just the natural negotiation of space and resources that unfolds at microscopic scales. Despite their complexity, hyphae do not rush. Their pace reflects the rhythm of the environments they inhabit. Soil shifts slowly, wood decays slowly, seasons advance and retreat with a steady cadence. Fungi match these patterns, moving with a patience that allows them to remain stable across long periods. They are not built for sudden change, but for endurance, for responding to gentle gradients of moisture, heat, and nutrients that change gradually over time. This thread-based body gives fungi a form unlike any other kingdom of life. It is not rigid like a plant, nor motion-driven like an animal. It is something entirely its own, a living, flowing architecture defined by movement, expansion, and an intimate awareness of the tiny spaces it inhabits. Hyphae slip into the world as if guided by instinct, but their behavior arises from simple rules carried out countless times across countless threads. And when you imagine these threads moving through soil, curling around fragments of wood, weaving into networks beneath the forest floor, you begin to see fungi not as background organisms, but as subtle explorers shaping the world in ways that are both delicate and profound. Their bodies may be simple, but through those threads, they create patterns of life that ripple through entire ecosystems. Fungi feed in a way that sets them apart from almost every other kingdom of life. Rather than drawing nutrients from sunlight like plants, or taking food inside their bodies like animals, fungi digest the world from the outside. They release enzymes into their surroundings, letting their chemistry seep into wood, leaf litter, soil, and even the bodies of insects. These enzymes break down complex materials into simpler forms that can then be absorbed back into the hyphae. It is a quiet process, unfolding slowly in darkness and dampness, yet it is one of the most important transformations happening on Earth. Without it, forests would choke beneath their own remains, and nutrients would be trapped in material too tough for most organisms to use. This external digestion begins at the tip of each hypha. When a fungus encounters something rich in organic material, such as a fallen leaf or a piece of buried wood, it releases a small cloud of enzymes. These enzymes act like soft keys, unlocking the chemical bonds that hold the material together. They dissolve the rigid walls of plant cells, unravel stubborn fibers, and break apart proteins and fats into their simpler components. Once these components drift free, the hypha absorbs them, drawing them through its thin walls and carrying them deeper into the network. The fungus grows as it digests, extending its threads into whatever space the breaking material creates. This method of feeding gives fungi access to places that animals could never reach. A hypha can slip into cracks narrower than a strand of hair, entering deep crevices inside logs, beneath bark, or within densely packed soil. It can move along the inside of a hollow stem, or penetrate the outer layers of seeds and nuts. Because the fungus does not need to take solid food into a mouth or stomach, it can explore environments that remain sealed away from creatures with more rigid bodies. The world becomes available one tiny chamber at a time, and the fungus transforms it from the inside out. The chemistry of this digestion is gentle when viewed on the scale of cells and threads. There are no sharp edges or sudden bursts of force. Instead, materials soften gradually as enzymes break their bonds. A piece of wood that feels solid beneath your hand is, at this microscopic level, a labyrinth of tunnels slowly widening as the fungus works through it. The lignin that gives wood its strength begins to yield. The cellulose fibers unwind. The colours shift from dense browns to softer shades as the material loses its structure. All of this happens without any sound, without motion visible to the eye, yet the transformation is steady and inevitable. In soil, this process plays out in countless tiny pockets. Hyphae weave among mineral grains, settling into spaces where organic matter has collected a fallen twig, a curled leaf, a flake of bark. Each one becomes a landscape of decay. Enzymes move into the debris, and the material begins to change. What was stiff becomes pliable. What was solid becomes porous. Over time, the pieces break down into fragments, then into grains, and finally into the dark, rich layer known as humus. This humus holds moisture, feeds plants, and provides a home for countless other organisms. The fungus does not create humus alone, but its role is central, the quiet engine of decomposition that keeps the cycle of life moving. Inside stumps and fallen logs, the chemistry takes on a different rhythm. Wood decomposes more slowly than leaf litter, and the interior of a log can remain cool and moist even in dry seasons. Hyphae thrive in this environment, growing in long strands that follow the grain of the wood. They create patterns of softening across the log, leaving behind streaks and ripples that tell the story of their spread. Sometimes the decay forms smooth, pale patches where the fungus has digested most of the lignin. Other times it creates dark lines known as zone boundaries, where two fungi meet and build chemical walls to defend their territory. Every part of the log becomes a field of subtle competitions and collaborations, all driven by the enzymes flowing from hyphal tips. The transformation of leaf litter is even more delicate. Leaves fall in countless shapes and colours, forming a soft layer on the forest floor. Moisture collects between them, and fungi enter, dissolving the thin cell walls and pulling nutrients from the veins and edges. The leaves curl and soften as they break down. Their textures shift from crisp to leathery to fine, dark particles. What was once a canopy becomes a ground layer rich in energy for plants, insects, and microbes. Without fungi, this transformation would halt, and forests would fill with layers of leaves stretching back through the years unable to return to the soil. External digestion also allows fungi to interact with materials that contain multiple layers of protection. Some fungi specialize in breaking down keratin, the tough protein found in feathers, claws, and hair. Others digest chitin, the material that forms the exoskeletons of insects. Still others break apart the waxes on leaves or the resins inside conifers. Each of these materials has evolved to resist decay, yet fungi produce enzymes precisely tuned to unlock them. The adaptation is a result of millions of years of evolution, shaped by the constant challenge of obtaining nutrients from a wide variety of sources. This versatility gives fungi an essential role in ecosystems. They are the recyclers that prevent dead material from accumulating. They turn tough remains into the soft foundation that supports new growth. They free nutrients trapped in wood and return them to the soil. They transform the leftovers of one generation into the nourishment of the next. Every handful of soil owes its richness, in part, to the quiet persistence of fungal digestion. The imagery of this process can feel almost like watching something melt slowly under a gentle heat, even though no heat is involved. A fallen branch, once rigid and wooden, begins to soften at the edges under the influence of enzymes its bark loosens. Its interior becomes lighter, more porous. Over months or years, the branch collapses into soft fragments. These fragments break apart, mix with soil, and eventually become indistinguishable from the forest floor. The change is not sudden but gradual, echoing the slow drift of time within natural cycles. The process can also resemble a kind of return. Material that once formed part of a living plant or animal is gradually released back into the environment. The energy stored in that material moves on, entering new pathways. Minerals return to the soil. Carbon joins the atmosphere or settles in deeper layers. Nitrogen becomes available to roots and microbes. Fungi guide this return with extraordinary efficiency, shaping the direction of nutrients without ever needing to move faster than a few millimeters each day. Within each decomposing space, a quiet chemistry unfolds. Hyphae extend and withdraw. Enzymes seep and dissolve. Nutrients flow through threads like water through the smallest channels of a stream. The world softens and reshapes itself, grain by grain, cell by cell. This is not destruction, it is transformation, the gentle disassembly of what once was, so that new growth can rise from the pieces. Imagining the work of fungi in this way brings a sense of calm to the idea of decay. Instead of something harsh or abrupt, it becomes a patient, continuous process that sustains life. The fallen leaf does not disappear. It becomes part of the soil. The stump does not rot away. It turns into a cradle for new seedlings. The log does not collapse in ruin, but opens into a habitat rich with nutrients, moisture, and shelter. Fungi shape the world by dissolving its hardest materials, yet the way they do this is soft, steady, and deeply connected to the rhythms of the environments they inhabit. Through external digestion, they transform what is solid into what is nourishing, and in doing so they support the vast cycles of renewal that define forests, fields, and every ecosystem where life depends on the return of organic matter to the soil. When a tree falls in a forest, its story does not end. It simply moves into a slower chapter, one carried out by fungi working patiently in the quiet spaces beneath bark, within rings of wood, and along the soft, shaded ground. These organisms are the planet's most effective recyclers, responsible for breaking down the toughest materials that plants create. Without them, forest would fill with the remains of earlier generations, layer upon layer of fallen trunks, branches, leaves, and roots. The ground would rise not from new growth, but from the weight of debris that never returns to the soil. Fungi prevent that by doing what almost no other life can do: unlocking the strength of lignin. Lignin is the substance that gives wood its firmness. It reinforces plant cell walls, strengthens trunks against wind, and allows trees to reach toward the sky without bending or folding. This remarkable material is so resilient that very few organisms have the enzymes needed to dissolve it. Most bacteria cannot touch it. Most animals cannot digest it. Even the constant pressure of weather only gradually softens it. Yet fungi, through a suite of specialized enzymes, break linen apart with steady precision. They work at the molecular level, loosening the bonds that give wood its structure and opening the way for deeper decay. This ability places fungi at the heart of forest health. When a tree falls, fungi begin exploring its bark, slipping into cracks and extending their hyphae through the early pathways of moisture and decay. The process is not fast. A large trunk may take decades to return fully to the soil. But fungi move with the rhythm of the forest itself, perfectly aligned with the slow unfolding of seasons. Summer heat softens outer bark. Autumn rains bring moisture that encourages growth. Winter slows the process, but does not stop it completely. Spring brings new surges of activity. Year after year, the fungi continue their work. In the early stages of decay, fungal hyphae creep into the surface layers of the wood. They begin by digesting the components that break down most easily: simple sugars, proteins, and the more accessible cellulose near the bark. As these layers weaken, the structure becomes porous, and pockets of air and moisture form inside the wood. These pockets allow more hyphae to enter, spreading deeper into the trunk. The fungal network grows through these openings like a gentle tide, transforming the wood from the inside out. The next phase involves the true challenge: lignin. Certain fungi, known as white rot fungi, produce enzymes that bleach the wood as they break down this stubborn material. Over time, the deep browns fade to pale shades, and the wood becomes soft enough to crumble between fingers. Brown rot fungi take a different approach. They break down cellulose instead, leaving behind lignin-rich residue that cracks into cube-like patterns. Each method returns nutrients to the environment in its own way, shaping the pace and texture of the decomposition. As the trunk continues to age, fungi work alongside other organisms. Insects carve tunnels that allow more air inside. Mosses settle on softened surfaces. Bacteria contribute their own chemistry, breaking down fragments that fungi loosen. The forest floor becomes a miniature community built around the fallen tree, each organism contributing its piece to the long transformation. Yet fungi remain the guides of this process. Their enzymes set the pace, turning rigid structure into material that other life can use. The transformation becomes particularly striking near the end. What once stood tall and firm eventually collapses into a soft, dark mass rich with organic matter. This mass holds water far better than living wood ever could. It becomes a nursery for seedlings, a shelter for insects, and a slow-release source of nutrients for plants. The elements of the tree return to the soil, becoming part of the ground from which new roots will grow. In this way, fungi close the loop, ensuring that forests do not choke on their own history, but continually renew themselves. Nutrient cycling is one of the most central roles fungi play in global ecosystems. As they break down dead plant material, they release nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and countless micronutrients back into the soil. Plants depend on these nutrients. Without fungi, forests would not simply become cluttered, they would starve. The nutrients locked within fallen leaves and wood would remain unavailable, out of reach of roots. The lush abundance of trees and understory plants would diminish over time, giving way to stunted growth and nutrient-poor soils. Through their decomposition, fungi also play a quiet role in the carbon cycle. Wood contains large amounts of carbon captured during the tree's lifetime. When fungi break the wood down, some of that carbon returns to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide through respiration, but a significant portion becomes part of the soil, locked away in stable forms that can remain underground for decades or centuries. This balance helps regulate carbon levels in the air and influences global climate. Forests rich in fungal activity store carbon more effectively than those where decomposition is impeded. The peaceful rhythm of decay has a calming, almost meditative quality when viewed through this lens. Nothing rushes, nothing is wasted. A branch falls, softens, and becomes part of the ground. Leaves drift down each autumn, forming layers that fungi transform into the soil that feeds the trees that will drop more leaves in years to come. The cycle is unbroken. It moves with a gentleness that mirrors the passage of time itself, slow, steady, and essential. Imagining this process through a full forest lifespan brings perspective. A tree grows for decades or centuries. It falls, and fungi begin their work. Over many seasons, the tree dissolves into the forest floor. New saplings sprout from the enriched soil. Animals return, attracted by the new growth. Another tree rises, another falls. Fungi weave these stories together, ensuring that each ending becomes a beginning. They do not claim attention, they simply make renewal possible. Even outside forests, fungi perform similar work. In grasslands, they decompose tough roots and stems that accumulate through dry seasons. In wetlands, they soften reeds and fallen vegetation. In urban environments, they break down wood chips, garden waste, and leaf piles that would otherwise linger. Every place where plant matter accumulates becomes a stage for fungal recycling. Their presence brings balance, returning nutrients to the soil and supporting the next cycle of life. The stillness of a rotting log can give the impression of inactivity, but beneath the surface the pace is steady. Hyphae continue their work day and night, responding to changes in moisture, following cracks in the wood, and releasing enzymes where they are most needed. The surface may remain unchanged for months, yet the transformation progresses millimetre by millimetre. It is a kind of slow-motion movement, visible only when viewed across seasons. By embracing decay, fungi reveal a truth often overlooked, that endings are not failures, but transitions. A fallen tree does not represent loss, it represents continuity. Without decay, life would stall under the weight of its past. With fungi, the past feeds the future. Nature's quiet recyclers work in darkness, silence, and patience. Their presence ensures that every fallen leaf, every snapped branch, every ancient tree that finally yields to time, finds its way back into the cycle of new growth. And though their work is gentle, its impact is vast, shaping the landscapes you walk through, the air you breathe, and the very ground beneath your feet. Beneath the surface of the forest, just under the soft layer of leaves and soil, lies a world woven together by threads so thin they disappear the moment light touches them. This is the realm of Mycelium, the true body of a fungus, far larger and more intricate than the mushrooms that briefly appear above ground. Mycelium spreads through the earth in delicate lattices, branching and interlacing until the threads form a network that can stretch through entire ecosystems. It is easy to overlook because it hides itself so completely, yet this hidden world shapes the landscape in ways both subtle and profound. Mycelium begins with the growth of countless hyphae, each one extending in search of nourishment. As these threads multiply and branch, they fuse into a unified network. The boundaries of this network are not fixed. They shift as conditions change, drawing inward when moisture fades and expanding outward when food becomes available. This flexibility allows the fungus to inhabit new territory gradually, adjusting its shape to fit the contours of the environment. The result is a body without a center, without organs, and without a single point of control. Instead, decision-making emerges from the collective behavior of all its threads. In this decentralized system, different parts of the network respond to local conditions. If one area encounters nutrients, growth accelerates in that direction. Hyphae branch more frequently, producing finer threads to absorb as much material as possible. In another part of the network, dryness may slow growth, prompting the fungus to conserve energy and redirect its resources. These local responses create a dynamic map of the environment, one that shifts continuously based on the tiny patterns of moisture, temperature, and chemical signals that drift through the soil. Through interconnected channels within the hyphae, mycelium is able to move nutrients from one part of its body to another. If a portion of the network finds a rich patch of decaying wood, the fungus can transport carbon, nitrogen, and minerals through its threads to areas where food is scarce. This redistribution creates an internal economy. The fungus supports itself in much the same way that a forest shares resources among its trees, steadily, invisibly, and without the need for any central command. It is a quiet, balancing act in which each branch of the network receives what it needs to survive. When the network is damaged, perhaps by the motion of an animal, a shifting stone, or the drying of soil, the mycelium responds automatically. Hyphae surrounding the damaged area increase their growth, weaving together to restore the structure. New threads form at the edges, bridging gaps and re-establishing the flow of nutrients. This regenerative ability allows the fungus to remain intact even when parts of it are disturbed, and it reflects an underlying resilience that has allowed fungi to persist for hundreds of millions of years. The underground world that mycelium creates is constantly in flux. Soil is not a uniform substance. It is a mosaic of mineral grains, pockets of air, tiny cavities filled with moisture, and fragments of organic matter. Mycelium threads itself through these spaces with extraordinary care. It curls around stones, follows the shape of decaying roots, and slips into the smallest crevices. Under a microscope, these movements appear as fine white tendrils exploring a world of deep browns and blacks. To the eye of someone walking through the forest, none of this is visible, yet the influence of the mycelium is everywhere. In many forests, the presence of mycelial networks gives the soil a spongy quality. As the threads bind particles together, they create aggregates that hold air and water more effectively than bare soil can. This structure helps maintain a stable environment for plant roots, insects, and microorganisms. It reduces erosion, improves drainage, and encourages the movement of nutrients. Because mycelium grows throughout the soil, it helps prevent the ground from compacting into dense, impenetrable layers. Every step a person takes in such a forest rests on a foundation quietly maintained by fungal networks. Mycelium does more than shape the soil physically. It shapes it chemically as well. As the fungus digests organic material, it releases compounds that influence the composition of the surrounding environment. Some of these compounds help break down complex molecules, while others alter the acidity of the soil or interact with minerals to release nutrients. Over years and decades, the work of mycelium changes the soil in ways that support plant life. Trees and shrubs thrive when their roots reach into soil enriched by fungal decomposition, drawing minerals that the fungus has freed from their former structures. This reciprocal relationship extends further when mycelium forms partnerships with plants. Many species of fungi connect to plant roots, forming structures that allow the exchange of nutrients. The fungus provides minerals and water drawn from the soil, while the plant offers carbon-rich compounds produced through photosynthesis. These mutualistic networks support entire forests, linking individual plants in quiet collaboration. But even without these partnerships, the presence of mycelium alone enhances the health of the ground, ensuring that nutrients continue to circulate through the ecosystem. Imagining the forest floor from beneath brings a sense of wonder to this hidden architecture. Picture the world beneath a moss bed, a dim space illuminated only by faint scattered light filtering through the soil, thin threads spread outward like fine roots, but without any clear direction or hierarchy. They weave between fallen needles, branches, and mineral grains, creating patterns that shift with the seasons. When rain seeps into the earth, the hyphae absorb moisture and swell slightly, becoming more active. When the air dries, the threads contract, conserving energy. The entire network adapts seamlessly, responding to changes that would be imperceptible to most other organisms. The presence of mycelium also adds a sense of continuity to the forest. A single network may span several trees, moving quietly beneath the leaf litter. As the seasons turn, plants grow, shed leaves, and release roots into the soil. Mycelium responds to these changes, entering decaying roots, softening fallen leaves, and rebuilding itself in places where old threads have withered. Year after year, the network persists, a silent engineer reorganizing the ground beneath every footstep. In some forests, mycelium forms living boundaries. When two fungal networks meet, they may fuse if they belong to the same organism, or create chemical barriers if they are different. These barriers can appear as dark lines in decaying wood, tracing the invisible borders that separate one colony from another. They reflect the organism's awareness of its surroundings, an awareness that does not rely on sight or sound but on chemical gradients and the movement of internal fluids. The complexity of these networks begins to feel almost like a hidden city, one without streets or buildings, but filled with pathways that transport resources, repair damage, and adjust to environmental shifts. Each thread contributes to the survival of the whole, and the whole adapts in ways that feel deliberate despite having no central controller. The network simply responds to the world, moment by moment, driven by the chemistry of each hypha. Throughout this quiet underground world, mycelium acts as one of nature's most effective engineers. It strengthens the soil, supports plants, recycles organic material, and maintains a dynamic balance that keeps ecosystems stable. The threads may be too small to see, and the network too hidden to notice, but their influence permeates everything above them. Beneath every forest, beneath every meadow, and beneath many of the places people walk without a second thought, these networks continue their patient work. They ask for nothing and announce nothing. Yet without them, the living world would lack the support it needs to endure. The threads of mycelium, though delicate, form one of the most quietly powerful structures in nature, a living foundation woven beneath the world, shaping the land from the shadows. Beneath the soil of a living forest, where light never reaches and the air is thick with the scent of earth, a quiet system of communication and exchange unfolds. It is not powered by wires or signals carried through the air. Instead, it is built from living threads, mycorrhizal fungi that connect plant roots into networks capable of sharing nutrients, warning of danger, and balancing the needs of different species. These networks, delicate and resilient, form a living infrastructure often described as the forest's underground internet. Though the comparison is imperfect, it captures an important idea. The forest is not a collection of isolated trees, but a community linked by fungal threads that allow life to flow between its members. Mycorrhizal fungi form some of the closest partnerships found in nature. These fungi attach to plant roots in several ways. Some wrap around the outer surfaces of roots, forming a sheath that extends into the soil like an expanded root system. Others slip between plant cells, weaving through the internal spaces without harming the plant. In both cases, the partnership benefits both parties. The fungus gains access to sugars produced by the plant through photosynthesis. The plant in return receives minerals and water gathered by the far-reaching fungal hyphae. This exchange is ancient, dating back hundreds of millions of years, and it remains one of the most important relationships sustaining modern forests. The network formed by these fungi is far more extensive than the roots of any individual tree. While roots extend several meters, fungal threads can travel much farther, exploring soil with remarkable sensitivity. They sense gradients of moisture, areas rich in minerals, and pockets of organic matter breaking down. They steer toward these resources automatically, transporting what they find back to their plant partners, but the threads do not serve only one plant. Instead, they connect multiple individuals, linking trees, shrubs, and even small herbaceous plants into a larger web. This interconnection allows nutrients to move between plants. A tree growing in rich soil may share excess nitrogen or phosphorus with a neighbouring seedling struggling in a shaded patch. A young sapling may receive carbon from older trees when it cannot produce enough sugars on its own. During drought, deeply rooted trees may provide water to shallower rooted species through the network, easing stress until rain returns. These exchanges happen through the mycorrhizal threads, carried by internal flows that respond to concentration differences and subtle chemical cues. The reason this system works so smoothly is that neither the fungi nor the plants operate under rigid strategies. The fungus receives sugars based on how much it provides the plant. If a particular root delivers more nutrients, the plant releases more carbon to that area. If another part of the network becomes less useful, the plant reduces its support. The fungi, in turn, allocate resources based on the conditions they encounter. They transport minerals from rich patches to areas where partner roots signal scarcity. They slow the flow toward roots that are already well supplied. The result is a self-adjusting system that maintains balance across the forest floor. Beyond nutrient exchange, the mycorrhizal network carries information. When a plant experiences stress, perhaps from drought, pest attack or disease, it releases chemical signals into its roots. These signals travel through the fungal threads to neighbouring plants, prompting them to adjust their own defences. They may strengthen their cell walls, produce compounds that deter insects, or tighten their stomatal openings to conserve water. This communication is not immediate or conscious, but it is effective. It allows the forest to respond collectively to changing conditions. The signals themselves are varied. Some plants release enzymes that fungal threads transport along their surfaces. Others produce molecules that move internally through the hyphae. The fungi do not interpret these signals, they simply act as conduits, allowing them to spread through the network. In this way, the fungi become messengers, distributing information that plants use to prepare themselves for challenges. Collaboration across species lines becomes possible through these networks. A large tree with deep roots may share water with smaller plants nearby. A shrub that thrives in a particular soil pocket may provide minerals to a neighbouring tree that struggles in the same location. In mixed forests, species that might otherwise compete directly can coexist because the underground connections buffer their differences. The fungi do not show preference for one species over another, unless the plant fails to reward them with sugars. Their purpose is simply to maintain their own growth, and in doing so, they help support a community. The physical space where these interactions occur is dark and humid. Roots twist through the soil, forming irregular pathways. Mycorrhizal threads wind between root hairs, slipping into tiny openings where moisture collects. The soil is rich with particles of clay, grains of sand, and organic matter in various stages of decay. Each element becomes part of the web, held together by fungal threads that give the ground its structure. When pressure from above compresses the soil, the threads help it spring back. When water flows through the upper layers, the threads help retain moisture, preventing the soil from drying too quickly. Walking through a forest, it is easy to overlook these connections. The surface seems still, with only the occasional mushroom hinting at the life below. Yet beneath each step lies a network that may stretch across several trees, linking individuals in ways that shape the entire ecosystem. A grove of birches might share nutrients with nearby pines. A cluster of saplings may survive longer because the network supports them in times of scarcity. When storms bring down branches, or when drought dries the soil, the mycorrhizal network adjusts automatically, redistributing resources to stabilize the community. The idea of a forest as an interconnected system becomes clear when thinking about how trees recover from disturbances. After a fire or a strong windstorm, many plants rely on the underground network to regain strength. Roots burned near the surface can still receive nutrients from deeper, undamaged parts of the fungal web. New shoots emerging from charred soil may receive minerals they cannot yet gather on their own. Over time, the network helps rebuild the community, guiding resources toward the areas that need them most. Even in forests heavily influenced by humans, these networks continue to operate. In managed forestry areas, mycorrhizal fungi still bind the soil, support young trees, and help distribute nutrients. In urban parks, they connect patches of greenery, helping them withstand environmental stress. The networks can persist for decades, even centuries, as long as the soil remains intact enough for the threads to maintain their connections. The quiet resilience of these networks becomes especially clear in older forests. Large trees, often called mother trees, stand at the center of vast underground webs. Their deep roots allow them to gather abundant water and minerals, much of which they share with younger or smaller plants through the fungi. These contributions support the next generation of the forest, ensuring continuity and stability. The mother trees in turn receive protection and resources when they need them, creating a cycle of giving and receiving shaped by the mycorrhizal threads. At the smaller scale, the relationship between roots and mycelium looks like an intimate embrace. Root hairs wrap gently around fungal strands. Hyphae slip between cells without breaking them, settling into spaces designed by evolution to house this partnership. The plant's tissues release sugars that drift into the fungal cells, and the fungus directs minerals back into the root. The exchange feels almost like a conversation, one carried out through chemistry rather than sound. This quiet collaboration is what allows forests to maintain balance. The network mediates competition, turning it into cooperation. It moves resources from places of abundance to places of need. It spreads warnings that help plants prepare for environmental challenges, and it stabilizes the soil, creating an environment where roots can anchor and grow. Mycorrhizal networks are not conscious. They do not plan or coordinate, yet their effect is cohesive, as if the forest itself acts with a kind of shared instinct. Life moves within the network. Water, minerals, sugars, signals, making the underground world pulse gently with activity. When imagining a forest, it is tempting to focus on the trunks, the branches, and the movement of leaves in the wind. But the true foundation lies below, where mycorrhizal fungi bind the community together. They are the unseen mediators, connecting lives that would otherwise stand alone, and shaping the resilience that allows forests to thrive through centuries of change. A mushroom is only a moment in the long life of a fungus. It rises quietly, lingers briefly, and then softens back into the earth, leaving almost no trace of its presence. While mycelium can endure for decades or centuries below the surface, a mushroom might exist for only a handful of days. This fleeting nature is part of what makes mushrooms so mysterious. They appear suddenly after rain, standing delicate and complete, as if they formed in the space of a single night. And in many cases, they did. Their growth is one of nature's most rapid transformations, a gentle unfurling driven by the expansion of cells that were already prepared beneath the ground. The formation of a mushroom begins long before anything is visible. Deep within the mycelium, the fungus prepares microscopic knots of hyphae. These tiny clusters are called primordia, and they resemble miniature versions of the mushrooms they will become. A primordium may be smaller than a grain of sand, but it contains the architecture for the full structure: the cap, the stem, the gills or pores beneath, and even the early internal spaces where spores will eventually form. For a long time, the primordium remains dormant, waiting for the right combination of humidity, temperature, and nutrient availability. When these conditions align, the primordium wakes, and the mushroom begins to push upward. The speed of this emergence is astonishing. Mushrooms do not grow by producing new cells at the tip the way plants and hyphae do. Instead, they rapidly inflate existing cells by filling them with water. The mycelium pumps moisture into the developing fruit, causing the cells to expand and stretch. This method allows mushrooms to rise in hours rather than days. After a night of rain, a forest floor that seemed empty. The evening before might be dotted with caps in the morning light. The growth is silent and effortless, a soft swelling that brings a new form into the world with minimal energy. As the mushroom expands, its structure becomes clear. The cap is the most recognizable part, forming a dome, umbrella, or disc depending on the species. Beneath the cap lie the gills or pores, thin, radiating plates or delicate tubes where the spores are produced. These surfaces create enormous amounts of space for spore formation, allowing a single mushroom to release millions or even billions of spores during its brief life. The stem, or stipe, lifts the cap above the ground so that wind currents can carry the spores away. Some mushrooms have rings formed from remnants of protective coverings that guarded the young fruiting body. Others have veils that stretch between the cap and stem, splitting as the mushroom matures. Each part of the mushroom is designed with precision. The gills are shaped to maximize airflow and release spores efficiently. The pores of boletes create a honeycomb of passages through which spores drift downward. Puffballs fill themselves with a fine, powdery cloud of spores that erupts when raindrops strike their surface. Even the fragile structure of an ink cap, which dissolves into a dark liquid as it matures, serves a purpose, spreading spores as the cap melts away. These strategies reflect millions of years of evolution, shaping mushrooms into some of the most effective reproductive structures in the fungal kingdom. The environment plays a decisive role in mushroom emergence. Humidity softens the soil and allows hyphae to move water into the developing fruiting body. Cooler temperatures slow evaporation, helping the mushroom retain moisture. Gentle breezes encourage spore dispersal. After sustained rainfall, the air in a forest becomes heavy with the scent of damp earth, and moisture lingers near the ground long after the rain stops. These conditions often mark the beginning of a mushroom bloom. Species that lie dormant through dry spells awaken in response to the sudden abundance of water, unfolding in rich variety across the forest floor. Air currents shape the lives of mushrooms even after they emerge. Spores drift most effectively when released into still or lightly moving air. Too much wind sends them upward before they can settle on suitable ground. Too little airflow keeps them clustered beneath the cap. Mushrooms have adapted to these patterns in subtle ways. Some species release their spores at dawn when the air is calm and humidity is high. Others rely on the warm currents rising from the forest floor at midday. The timing of release is often so precise that spores may drift in a narrow window each day, sending their genetic material into the world with remarkable efficiency. In the early morning, when mist still clings to the ground, mushrooms often look their most vivid. Dew gathers on their caps, highlighting the textures, smooth, wrinkled, scaly or velvety. Light filters through the forest canopy in soft strands, glinting off droplets that rest on the edges of the gills. The air is cool, carrying the scent of soil and leaves. In these moments, mushrooms appear almost otherworldly, as if they formed not through threads hidden in the soil but from the morning air itself. Their colours stand out against the muted browns and greens, bright reds, translucent whites, deep golds, subtle greys, and rich browns. Some species glow faintly in the dark, their biochemical light shimmering beneath fallen branches or along rotting logs. Yet despite their beauty and complexity, mushrooms remain temporary. Their purpose is simple: produce and release spores. Once this is accomplished, the fruiting body begins to decline. Moisture evaporates. The cap softens. The edges curl inward. In some species, the structure collapses into a soft mass that blends into the leaf litter. In others, the mushroom dries out, becoming brittle and papery. The process of decomposition begins quickly, often aided by insects, microbes, and other fungi. Within days, the mushroom disappears entirely, leaving behind nothing but the spores it released into the wind. The contrast between the fleeting life of a mushroom and the enduring life of the mycelium beneath it is striking. The mycelium may have spent years exploring the soil, breaking down organic matter and absorbing nutrients. It may have formed partnerships with plants, connected roots, or taken part in the recycling of a fallen tree. The mushroom, by comparison, is simply a moment. a brief expression of the fungus's reproductive strategy. Its emergence is like the opening of a small window through which the fungus sends its future into the world. This temporary nature is part of what makes mushrooms such a quintessential symbol of the unseen world of fungi. People encounter them more often than the hyphae or mycelium that sustain them, yet these encounters show only a tiny fraction of the organism's life. A mushroom often gives the illusion that the fungus has appeared suddenly, but in truth, the organism has been present long before the fruiting body rises. The mushroom is only the visible sign, the tip of a vast and hidden system. The softness of this cycle adds to the mushroom's quiet charm. One moment, the organism stands firm, its cap wide and bright. The next moment, or so it seems, the forest has reclaimed it. The transformation from rising fruit to decaying form is as gentle as its emergence, a return to the soil guided by the same rhythms that brought it forth. Through this process, the mushroom becomes part of the nutrient cycle, contributing to the environment that once supported it. Even the variety of mushroom shapes reflects the adaptability of fungi. Some mushrooms stand tall to release spores into open air, others remain close to the ground, relying on animals or raindrops to spread their spores. Coral fungi branch upward like tiny trees, increasing their surface area for reproduction. Shelf fungi grow from the sides of trees, forming layers that release spores into vertical air currents. Each form represents a finely tuned solution to the challenges of reproduction in diverse environments. Understanding the life of a mushroom offers a glimpse into the quiet ingenuity of fungi. These fruiting bodies are more than decorations on the forest floor. They are the final expression of a long sequence of growth, organization, and preparation. Their simplicity hides the complexity of the networks that create them. Their fragility hides the strength of the organism that supports them, and their brief presence hides the vast story unfolding beneath the soil as the mycelium continues its patient work. In the end, the mushroom reminds us that much of the fungus's life occurs out of sight. The fruiting body rises, releases spores, and fades, but the network below remains, ready to send up new shapes when the world becomes damp and cool again. The mushroom's life is a moment of emergence, fleeting but essential, delicate yet purposeful, a quiet chapter in a much longer tale written beneath the surface of the earth. A spore is among the smallest expressions of life, yet it carries within it the full potential of an entire fungus. These tiny structures drift through the air by the billions, released from mushrooms, molds, and countless other fungal forms. They travel unseen, settling on soil, leaves, bark, and water, waiting for the rare moment when the conditions are right to awaken. Despite their size, spores are remarkably resilient. They withstand heat, cold, dryness, radiation, and time itself, with a quiet endurance that has allowed fungi to survive across vast stretches of Earth's history. Understanding spores is to understand how fungi spread, persist, and reshape the world without ever drawing attention to themselves. A single mushroom can release an astonishing number of spores. Some produce hundreds of thousands, others millions, and a few species release over 1 billion from one fruiting body. This scale is necessary because spores face enormous uncertainty. Only a tiny fraction will land in a location suitable for growth, somewhere with enough moisture, the right nutrients, and space for hyphae to extend. The rest drift into environments where they cannot germinate. Many fall onto dry surfaces or hard stone. Others are carried into the open ocean or become trapped in places where they cannot find food. Yet the sheer number of spores ensures that enough reach suitable ground for the fungus to continue its lineage. Spore formation begins within the complex architecture beneath a mushroom's cap. On the gills or pores, specialized cells produce spores through processes that combine precision and efficiency. Each spore is equipped with a protective outer layer made of tough compounds that shield it from damage. This layer allows the spore to remain dormant for long periods, sometimes years, until environmental cues trigger germination. When the mushroom releases its spores, they fall in a thin, invisible rain, drifting away on faint currents of air. The resilience of spores is one of the reasons fungi have colonized nearly every habitat on Earth. Many spores survive extreme dryness by entering a state of suspended activity. Their internal structures shrink and stabilize, allowing them to persist in conditions that would kill most cells. Some spores endure intense heat, surviving temperatures that destroy proteins and DNA. Others withstand freezing that would rupture ordinary cells. There are spores found in ancient soil layers that remain viable after centuries, and spores recovered from old herbarium specimens have sprung to life long after the original fungus decayed. This endurance makes spores some of the most persistent travelers in the natural world. Wind is one of the most important forces guiding spore movement. Once released, spores can rise into the air and drift along currents that carry them across forests, fields, and even oceans. High-altitude winds are especially powerful distributors. These winds lift spores miles above the surface, carrying them between continents. Scientists have found spores in upper layers of the atmosphere, moving along global pathways shaped by weather systems. A spore released in one region may settle thousands of miles away, landing in a landscape entirely different from the one that produced it. This ability to travel such enormous distances allows fungi to colonize new areas, ensuring genetic diversity and ecological resilience. Rain also plays a role in spore dispersal. In some fungi, raindrops trigger the release of spores with surprising force. The impact of a drop sends a small puff of spores into the air, scattering them through the understory. In others, raindrops strike cup-shaped structures that fling spores outward as if from tiny catapults. These mechanisms take advantage of natural rhythms, using water as a means of transport and timing. Spore release to periods when the environment is moist enough to support new growth. Animals contribute to spore movement as well. Some fungi produce sticky or spiny spores that cling to fur or feathers. Others create scents or colours that attract insects, encouraging them to walk across spore-bearing surfaces. A small beetle wandering through a mushroom's gills may carry spores to a new patch of soil. Even large animals can assist in dispersal. Spores trapped in hooves, claws, or damp fur travel long distances. When these spores fall off or become exposed to moisture again, they germinate and begin the slow process of forming new mycelial networks. Light can reveal the presence of spores in moments of stillness. If a mushroom releases its spores in a beam of sunlight, the air becomes filled with tiny drifting particles. Each one appears like a dust mote, moving gently in the warm glow. The sight lasts only a moment, and then the spores disappear into the air, invisible once more. Imagining this invisible rain occurring constantly in forests around the world brings a sense of the continuous, quiet activity that defines fungal life. Even when no mushroom is visible, spores are settling into the soil, waiting for the hint of moisture that will begin their journey. Once a spore lands in a suitable environment, it absorbs water and swells. Its outer layer softens just enough to allow the emergence of a germ tube, the first hypha. This hypha begins to extend, exploring the surroundings in search of nutrients. If it encounters the hypha of another spore of the same species, the two may fuse, combining their genetic material and forming the foundation for a larger mycelial network. If not, a single spore can sometimes generate a network on its own, though this depends on the species and the environmental conditions. In either case, the spore has completed its primary purpose to establish the next generation of fungal life. Some spores are designed to survive long periods without germinating. They remain dormant until conditions shift. A patch of soil that has been dry for years may suddenly host new hyphae after a rainstorm awakens spores buried deep within it. Forests disturbed by fire often experience a burst of fungal activity as spores germinate in the newly exposed soil. The resilience of spores allows fungi to appear quickly after environmental change, helping ecosystems recover by beginning the process of decomposition and nutrient cycling. In certain fungi, spores serve roles beyond reproduction. Some species produce thick-walled spores that function as survival structures, protecting the fungus during harsh seasons. These spores store nutrients that the fungus can use once conditions become favorable again. Other species produce spores that act like seeds, forming small, resilient packets that carry essential materials for growth. The variety of spore types mirrors the diversity of fungi themselves, each adapted to the challenges of its environment. The scale of spore release can seem almost excessive, but it reflects an ancient strategy shaped by natural selection. In a world where conditions vary widely, producing enormous numbers of spores increases the chance that some will reach suitable locations. The sheer quantity also allows fungi to colonize new territories rapidly, especially after disturbances like storms, fires, or floods. This ability to respond swiftly to change gives fungi a significant advantage, allowing them to reclaim spaces where other organisms may struggle to survive. Seeing spores as invisible travelers adds a new dimension to the understanding of fungi. They drift silently through forests, fields, and cities. They rest on windowsills, tree bark, and blades of grass. They settle in the crevices of logs and stones. All the while, they carry within them the blueprint for entire ecosystems of hyphae and mycelium. Even when the forest is still, spores move through the air like tiny seeds searching for a place to grow. Their importance stretches beyond reproduction. Spores allow fungi to persist through years of scarcity. They allow species to move into new environments. They provide the starting point for decomposition and nutrient cycling in countless ecosystems. And they maintain the continuity of fungal life through geological time, linking the present to ancient pasts when the first fungi emerged onto land. Imagining a single spore settling in a quiet patch of soil, trembling slightly as a breeze passes over the ground, highlights the delicacy of this process. Yet beneath that delicacy lies astonishing resilience. A spore can wait for years. It can survive conditions that would destroy most living cells, and when the moment finally arrives, it opens, extending its first thread into the world, beginning a journey that may one day produce networks stretching meters through the earth and mushrooms rising in the early morning light. Spores are the quiet survivors of the fungal kingdom, the particles of life that drift unseen, endure almost anything, and ensure that fungi remain among the most adaptable and enduring organisms on Earth. Fungi are often pictured on forest floors, rising through damp soil or softening fallen logs, but their true range stretches far beyond the places where most people expect to find them. They inhabit some of the harshest environments on Earth. Deserts that receive almost no rain, glaciers locked in ice, radioactive zones filled with damaged structures, and caves so deep that light has never touched their walls. In each of these places, fungi demonstrate an ability to adapt that surpasses nearly every other form of life. They grow slowly, patiently, and in ways that reveal how flexible, inventive, and resilient they truly are. In deserts, where the heat can be intense and moisture almost non-existent, certain fungi survive by making themselves nearly weightless. Their spores ride air currents, settling into cracks in rocks or beneath thin layers of dust where small pockets of moisture occasionally collect. When rare rainfall arrives, these spores absorb water, swell, and begin to germinate. The resulting hyphae grow cautiously, conserving energy and remaining dormant for long stretches between opportunities to feed. Some desert fungi form partnerships with plants, living on their roots and helping them gain minerals from the dry soil. In return, the plants provide carbon, allowing both organisms to endure conditions that would be impossible alone. On the opposite end of the climate spectrum, glaciers and polar ice harbour fungi that live in freezing temperatures. These extremophiles tolerate cold that halts the activity of most cells. Their proteins function at temperatures below the freezing point of water, and their cell walls remain flexible even in icy environments. Some of these fungi grow within the tiny channels that form between ice crystals. Here, brief periods of melting and refreezing create microhabitats that allow slow but steady growth. When the summer sun softens the surface of the ice, the fungi absorb moisture and extend their hyphae outward. Winter brings months of dormancy, yet the fungi persist, surviving in silence beneath the snow. In deep caves, fungi encounter an entirely different challenge: the absence of light. Without light, photosynthesis is impossible, and the organisms that depend on it cannot establish themselves. Fungi, however, feed on organic matter brought in by water, wind, or animals. Some cave fungi grow on bat guano, breaking down the nutrients it contains. Others inhabit the mineral-rich walls, dissolving microscopic particles for sustenance. In the stillness of the cave, mycelium creeps along damp surfaces, its progress almost invisible. The air is cool, the humidity high, and the darkness constant. These fungi thrive in a world where nearly every other form of life struggles to survive. One of the most remarkable environments inhabited by fungi is the area surrounding radioactive materials. When researchers observed certain fungi growing inside the damaged reactor at Chernobyl, they were astonished to find the organisms not only surviving but thriving. Some species appear to use melanin, a pigment also found in human skin, to absorb radiation and convert it into a form of usable energy. These fungi, often called radiotrophic fungi, grow toward radiation sources instead of away from them. Their ability to withstand intense levels of ionizing radiation suggests biochemical strategies that allow them to repair DNA damage rapidly, or prevent it from occurring in the first place. This resilience hints at possibilities for biotechnology and space exploration, where radiation poses a significant challenge. In rocky environments where nutrients are scarce, fungi demonstrate another extraordinary talent. They digest rock. This ability, known as lithotrophy, involves the release of acids that dissolve minerals. The fungus then absorbs the released ions, using them as sources of nutrients. Over time, fungi contribute to the weathering of stone, helping to form soil from bare rock. Their actions shape landscapes slowly, grain by grain, turning solid surfaces into environments that other organisms can eventually colonize. In this sense, fungi become geological agents, participating in the long cycle that creates habitable ground from ancient stone. Glow-in-the-dark fungi add yet another layer of fascination to the fungal kingdom. These species produce bioluminescence, emitting soft green or blue light in darkness. The glow originates from chemical reactions involving luciferin compounds, similar to the processes that create light in fireflies. The purpose of the light varies among species. In some cases, the glow may attract insects that help spread spores. In others, it may deter animals that might otherwise feed on the fungus. This subtle illumination also helps conserve energy by producing light only when it is beneficial. In deep forests at night, these glowing fungi create a quiet spectacle, a gentle shimmer on logs and leaf litter, like tiny stars fallen to the ground. Some fungi engage in behavior that resembles agriculture. A few species cultivate bacteria, providing them with shelter and nutrients in exchange for chemical compounds produced by the bacteria. These partnerships allow fungi to access energy from sources that would otherwise be unavailable. One striking example is found in lichens, where fungi farm algae or cyanobacteria. The fungus provides protection and moisture, while the photosynthetic partner produces sugars. Together they form a new organism that colonizes rocks, trees, and even bare soil. These lichens can survive in extreme environments, from the Arctic tundra to high-altitude mountain slopes, demonstrating the combined resilience of their fungal and photosynthetic components. Other fungi harvest energy from surprising sources. Some can capture the chemical energy released by minerals. Others thrive on the remains of insects trapped in tree sap or resin. A few rely on metals such as iron or manganese, using them in metabolic processes that support slow but stable growth. These adaptations allow fungi to inhabit niche environments where competition is minimal. Even in places nearly untouched by other organisms, fungi find ways to survive. Their persistence in extreme habitats reveals a broader truth about fungal life. Fungi do not rely on stable conditions. They do not need sunlight. They do not require rich soil or predictable weather. Instead, they adapt. They change their metabolism, alter their growth patterns, and modify their chemistry to match the environment they occupy. This flexibility is one of the primary reasons fungi have endured mass extinctions, climate shifts, and the slow drift of continents. They simply adjust, finding new ways to live when old conditions fade. In caves filled with damp air, mycelium spreads across stone, forming delicate films that glisten under the faintest light. In deserts, spores rest for years until rare moisture awakens them. On glaciers, fungi cling to the tiny pockets where liquid water forms in brief thaws. In radioactive ruins, they move toward beams of energy invisible to the human eye. Each of these scenes illustrates the quiet persistence of fungi, their ability to endure environments that challenge nearly every other organism. Even in human-made structures, fungi demonstrate adaptability. They appear on walls, in basements, and on food, colonizing spaces where temperature and humidity fluctuate unpredictably. Some species grow on jet fuel, surviving in tanks that hold substances toxic to nearly all life. Others inhabit the surfaces of spacecraft, enduring the sterilization processes meant to eliminate microorganisms. Their presence in these artificial environments reveals their capacity to withstand the stresses of modern human activity. Through all of these adaptations, fungi remain defined by their subtle approach to survival. They do not rush into new territory. They arrive quietly, germinating when conditions allow, growing slowly and making use of whatever resources are available. Their success is not based on speed or competition, but on patience. They wait where others cannot, endure what others avoid, and persist where others fail. This patience has allowed them to inhabit some of Earth's oldest, coldest, hottest, driest, and most toxic places. Imagining the world through the perspective of fungi highlights the diversity of life hidden in plain sight. A rock face in a desert, a cave wall in complete darkness, a glacier locked in ice, and even the remains of a damaged reactor, all become habitats where fungal threads quietly explore and establish themselves. Their growth may be slow, but their presence is steady. In the end, the adaptability of fungi stands as a quiet reminder that life finds ways to persist in unlikely places. With their flexible metabolisms, resilient spores, and patient growth, fungi have spread across nearly every environment on Earth. Their ability to colonize strange places speaks not only to their ingenuity, but also to the deep evolutionary history that has shaped them into some of the planet's most enduring and resourceful organisms. Fungi have mastered the art of partnership in ways that feel both ancient and quietly inventive. Rather than living alone, they often choose to intertwine their lives with plants, algae, animals, and even bacteria, forming relationships that support entire ecosystems. These alliances are not temporary conveniences. They are deeply rooted strategies that allow fungi and their partners to flourish together, each offering something the other cannot easily obtain. Through these mutualistic connections, fungi become architects of cooperation, shaping environments where life grows stronger through shared effort. One of the most remarkable examples of these partnerships is the relationship between fungi and plants. Mycorrhizal fungi connect to plant roots, forming bonds that allow the exchange of nutrients and water. The fungus extends its hyphae far into the soil, gathering minerals that roots alone would never reach. In return, the plant provides sugars produced through photosynthesis. This exchange supports forests, grasslands, and many agricultural systems. It strengthens plants during drought, supplies minerals in poor soils, and helps entire communities stay balanced. Without these partnerships, many ecosystems would lack the stability they rely on to survive shifting climates and changing seasons. The collaboration between fungi and algae forms one of nature's most resilient organisms, the lichen. A lichen is not a single species, but a partnership in which fungal filaments surround photosynthetic algae or cyanobacteria. The fungus shelters its partner from harsh conditions, providing moisture and a stable environment. The algae in turn produce sugars that feed the fungus. Together they create a composite organism capable of colonizing environments where neither partner could survive alone. Lichens cling to bare stone, grow on wind-swept cliffs, and spread across the surfaces of trees and soil. They often appear in colours that stand out: pale greens, deep oranges, soft greys, adding quiet beauty to landscapes that seem otherwise barren. These organisms help shape their environment in subtle ways. As lichens grow on rock, they slowly release chemicals that break down minerals over years and centuries. This contributes to the formation of soil, creating habitats that plants can eventually colonize. Lichens also absorb moisture from fog and rain, creating microhabitats that support insects and small plants. Their role may be understated, but their influence spreads widely through ecosystems, especially in places where life seems sparse. Fungi also collaborate with animals in ways that reveal surprising complexity. Leafcutter ants, for example, are among the most skilled farmers in the natural world, they cut leaves into fragments and carry them back to their underground nests, not to eat, but to feed a fungus cultivated within chambers of the colony. The fungus breaks down the plant material and produces structures rich in nutrients, which the ants consume. The ants care for the fungus meticulously, cleaning it, removing contaminants, and ensuring perfect humidity. In return, the fungus provides their primary food source. Without the ants, the fungus cannot survive. Without the fungus, the ants lose their ability to thrive. Their interdependence forms a miniature agricultural system that has existed for millions of years. Other insects engage in similar partnerships. Termites host fungi within their nests, relying on them to break down tough plant fibers that the insects cannot digest alone. The fungus softens the material, making it more accessible to the termites. Meanwhile, the termites maintain the ideal conditions for fungal growth. Together, they turn wood into decomposed matter, contributing to nutrient cycling in tropical and subtropical ecosystems. Birds and mammals also interact with fungi in ways that create mutual benefits. Some mammals feed on mushrooms that grow underground, using their keen sense of smell to locate them beneath soil or leaf litter. When these animals travel, they carry fungal spores in their fur or release them through droppings, helping the fungus colonize new areas. This movement strengthens genetic diversity and spreads beneficial partnerships across landscapes. In return, the animals gain nutrients during seasons when other foods are scarce. Bacteria also play roles in fungal partnerships, forming microscopic alliances that support both organisms. Certain fungi cultivate bacteria on their surfaces or within their structures. These bacteria help break down complex molecules or fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, providing valuable nutrients. The fungus offers shelter and a stable environment. This cooperation extends the capabilities of both partners, allowing them to inhabit habitats where resources are limited. The nutrient trading that occurs through these partnerships stabilizes entire ecosystems. When a fungus shares minerals with plants, those plants grow stronger and provide food and shelter for countless organisms. When lichens help form soil, they pave the way for new communities. When leafcutter ants farm fungi, they maintain the health of forests by recycling plant material. Each partnership contributes to a larger system where cooperation becomes a foundation for resilience. This interconnectedness creates images of quiet, cooperative life. Picture a forest floor with roots weaving through soil, mycelium intertwining with them in delicate patterns. Each thread carries nutrients, messages, and moisture between partners. In a desert, lichens cling to stone, surviving in stillness while slowly building the first layers of soil. In the canopy of a tropical forest, ants carry leaves along narrow trails, supporting fungal gardens hidden beneath the earth. These scenes reveal the gentle power of shared existence. Organisms thriving not by standing alone, but by leaning on each other. The chemistry of these interactions is equally intricate. Plants release signals through their roots that guide fungi toward areas of need. Fungi control the flow of nutrients based on what they sense around them. Bacteria adjust their activity to support fungal metabolism. Each organism contributes to a larger harmony, one that is constantly adjusting to shifts in moisture, temperature, and nutrient availability. These micro-level processes ripple outward to influence entire landscapes. What makes fungi exceptional partners is their flexibility. They do not require one specific type of environment or one specific type of partner. They can form alliances with plants, algae, animals, or bacteria depending on the opportunities available. This adaptability allows them to support life in deserts, forests, grasslands, and even urban environments. Their partnerships evolve as conditions change, showing a remarkable ability to adjust their strategies while maintaining balance. This openness to cooperation adds another dimension to the identity of fungi. They are not simply decomposers or recyclers, they are mediators, bridge builders, and quiet collaborators. Their networks create pathways that allow resources to flow where they are needed. Their communities support diversity rather than competition. Their partnerships show that even the most unassuming organisms can profoundly shape the structure of ecosystems. Imagining these interactions across time reveals how these relationships have guided the evolution of entire environments. Lichens prepared early Earth for plant life by building soil on bare rock. Mycorrhizal fungi made it possible for plants to colonize land by improving their ability to absorb nutrients. Fungal partnerships with insect helped shape the behavior and evolution of both partners. These connections stretch back hundreds of millions of years, creating patterns that have persisted through changing climates and geological shifts. Through all of this, the gentle power of relational life becomes clear. Fungi teach that strength does not always come from standing alone, but from building bridges that allow many forms of life to thrive together. Their partnerships form the foundations of ecosystems, support species through environmental challenges, and enable life to flourish where it otherwise might falter. In these quiet collaborations, fungi reveal themselves as masters of symbiosis, organisms that thrive through connection, patience, and the subtle sharing of resources. They weave communities together, shaping the world not through force, but through the steady, persistent work of cooperation. Fungal parasitism unfolds in ways that feel both intricate and strangely delicate. Even when a fungus infects another organism, the process is not violent in the way many imagine. It is slow, precise, and governed by subtle exchanges shaped by millions of years of shared evolution. Parasitic fungi exist in nearly every ecosystem, influencing insects, plants, and even other fungi. Their presence may seem unsettling at first glance, but in truth, they play essential roles in keeping environments balanced. Their relationships with their hosts reveal a quiet and complex dance, one where life adapts to life with remarkable specificity. Some of the best-known parasitic fungi target insects. These fungi release spores that settle on the outer surfaces of ants, beetles, flies, or other small creatures. When conditions allow, a spore germinates and sends a tiny hypha into the insect's body. This hypha grows slowly, navigating the host's internal spaces with surprising accuracy. Instead of destroying its host immediately, the fungus uses the insect's body as a source of nutrients. It spreads through the tissues in a controlled manner, guided by chemical cues that help it avoid vital organs for as long as possible. The aim is not to cause chaos, but to sustain itself long enough to complete its life cycle. Some fungi influence the behavior of their insect hosts with eerie precision. They do not act through consciousness or intention. Instead, they rely on natural chemicals that subtly shift the insect's responses to its environment. An infected ant may climb a stem or cling to a leaf vein in a position that allows the fungus to release its spores into the air. A fly might seek out a location with the perfect balance of humidity and airflow. These behaviors appear deliberate, but they are simply the result of the fungus adjusting biochemical pathways within the host. The insect becomes part of a process that unfolds slowly and quietly, shaped by countless evolutionary adjustments. The sight of a fungus emerging from an insect can be startling, yet even this moment carries a kind of biological elegance. The fruiting body grows outward only when the host's resources are fully used, and when the environment offers the best chance for spore dispersal, this timing ensures that the fungus does not waste energy. The insect, though transformed by the end, has played a role in the continuation of a lineage that has existed for millions of years. In forests where such interactions are common, parasitic fungi help regulate insect populations, preventing outbreaks that might damage vegetation. Plants too encounter parasitic fungi. These fungi often enter through natural openings, wounds, or the spaces between root hairs. Once inside, they grow through plant tissues, sometimes blocking water flow or altering the plant's growth patterns. Yet even in these cases, the relationship is not solely destructive. Parasitic fungi can influence which plants dominate an area, allowing new species to establish themselves. They can thin crowded seedlings, reducing competition and helping forests diversify. Their presence contributes to the dynamic nature of plant communities, ensuring that no single species overwhelms the others. Some fungi parasitize other fungi, forming relationships that are intricate and surprisingly balanced. A parasitic fungus may infiltrate the mycelium of another species, drawing nutrients from it without immediately destroying it. In some cases, the two fungi coexist for extended periods, each adjusting its growth in response to the other. This fungal-on-fungal parasitism shapes underground networks in ways that remain largely invisible. Yet the influence can ripple outward, affecting decomposition rates, soil chemistry, and even the availability of nutrients to plants. Across all these examples, the key to understanding fungal parasitism lies in recognizing the slow, measured pace at which it unfolds. These fungi do not rush, they do not overwhelm their hosts in an instant. Instead, they follow finely tuned patterns shaped by countless generations of adaptation. Host and parasite evolve together, each influencing the other's biology in a quiet cycle of response and counter-response. The resulting balance ensures that parasitism remains part of a larger ecological tapestry, rather than a force of unchecked destruction. This balance becomes clear when looking at ecosystems over long periods. Parasitic fungi help regulate populations, control the spread of certain species, and open ecological space for others. They influence the availability of resources, the diversity of insects and plants, and the stability of food webs. Without these fungi, ecosystems would become less dynamic and more vulnerable to imbalances. Their role is subtle but essential, woven into soil, roots, leaves, and the bodies of small creatures in ways that maintain the natural rhythms of life. Even the most striking forms of parasitism have gentle moments. Picture an insect resting on a leaf as spores drift through the air, settling softly on its body. The initial stages of infection are silent. The hypha grows inward without disturbing the insect's movements. Days may pass before the host shows any sign of change, and when the fruiting body emerges, it does so with the same softness that characterizes so much of the fungal world. The transformation, though dramatic, remains a part of the quiet cycles of nature. In deep forests, parasitic fungi help maintain balance among insect communities. In grasslands, they influence which plants thrive. In soil, they reshape fungal networks, adding subtle shifts that affect decomposition and nutrient flow. These interactions continue in stillness, hidden beneath bark or leaf litter. Despite their invisibility, they keep ecosystems resilient by ensuring that no population grows unchecked. Understanding fungal parasitism also highlights the remarkable specificity of fungal life. Many parasites target only one species or a small group of related hosts. Their adaptations are so finely tuned that they recognize particular chemical signatures, surface structures, or behavioral patterns. This specificity prevents widespread harm and ensures that the parasite does not disrupt the entire ecosystem. Instead, it shapes the environment in measured ways, guiding populations toward balance. The evolutionary dance between host and parasite unfolds gently across generations. A fungus may become slightly more effective at entering its host. The host may develop resistance that slows the spread of the fungus. The fungus may adapt to these defenses. The cycle continues, creating a relationship defined not by conflict, but by adjustment. Both organisms persist, each influencing the other's future. Imagining these interactions in slow motion brings their complexity into focus. A tiny spore landing on an insect's exoskeleton, a thread of hyphae entering the smallest opening, the fungus growing inward, following patterns guided by chemistry rather than intention. The host responding in its own ways, the environment shaping their interaction. All of this unfolds with a softness that contrasts sharply with the idea of parasitism as something violent. In the quiet world of fungi, parasitism becomes another form of connection, still intense, still consequential, but woven into the larger fabric of ecological balance. These relationships remind us that even interactions often seen as negative can support life in unexpected ways. Parasitic fungi control populations, maintain diversity, and influence the rhythms of entire ecosystems. Their world is strange, complex, and often hidden from view. Yet within that hidden world lies a subtle harmony. A fungus enters a host, grows, and completes its life cycle. The host population adjusts. The ecosystem shifts gently, finding new balance. And through these cycles, life continues, shaped by interactions that are as delicate as they are astonishing. In this sense, the strange world of fungal parasites is not frightening, but quietly fascinating, a testament to the ways organisms evolve together, respond to one another, and maintain the intricate equilibrium that supports life on Earth. Soil may appear simple at first glance, just a dark mixture of sand, clay, and decomposed material beneath your feet. But within that quiet surface lies one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth. Every handful of healthy soil holds a vast network of life, from bacteria and microscopic animals to plant roots and fungal threads. At the heart of this living community stand fungi, which play a central role in building, maintaining, and transforming the structure of soil. The hyphae move through the ground with delicate precision, binding particles together, guiding the flow of nutrients, and shaping the environment in ways that give rise to fertile landscapes. To understand how fungi build soil, it helps to imagine what soil would be like without them. Without fungal threads binding things together, soil would collapse into dense, compacted layers. Water would run off instead of soaking in. Roots would struggle to find pathways through the ground. Nutrients would remain trapped in large fragments of organic matter, inaccessible to plants. The soil would lose its ability to support diverse life. Yet fungi prevent all of this by weaving their hyphae through the spaces between particles, creating a structure that is both firm and airy. Hyphae act like microscopic fibers, binding soil particles into small clusters known as aggregates. These aggregates create pockets of air and water that roots need to grow, When hyphae wrap around grains of sand, specks of clay, and bits of organic material, they hold the soil together while also allowing it to breathe. This combination of stability and porosity makes the ground more resilient to erosion, helping it withstand heavy rain and strong winds. As the hyphae grow, they continually reinforce the soil, mending weak spots and adjusting to changes in moisture and temperature. In addition to binding soil particles, fungi contribute to the chemical processes that give soil its richness. When they break down organic matter, leaves, wood, roots, and other remnants, they release nutrients in forms that plants can use. This decomposition enriches the soil with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and countless micronutrients. The mycelium becomes a conduit for these nutrients, absorbing them in one place and releasing them in another. As hyphae spread, they carry these dissolved minerals through the soil, creating a dynamic flow that supports the entire ecosystem. One of the most important roles fungi play in soil formation is the storage of carbon. As fungi break down organic matter, they convert some of the carbon into stable compounds that remain in the soil for long periods. Some of these compounds bind tightly to mineral surfaces, becoming part of the deep carbon store that influences global climate. Other forms of carbon become part of the fungal cell walls, eventually contributing to the organic material that gives soil its dark, rich color. Through these processes, fungi help keep carbon underground, rather than releasing it into the atmosphere, quietly shaping the planet's carbon cycle. The interactions between fungi and plant roots further enhance soil structure. Mycorrhizal fungi attach to roots and extend their hyphae into the soil, dramatically increasing the area available for water and nutrient absorption. In return, the plants supply carbon-rich sugars to the fungi. This partnership strengthens both organisms while also improving the soil around them. As mycorrhizal networks grow, they create channels that allow water to move more easily through the ground. They help break up compacted areas, making space for roots to spread, and they stabilize soil on slopes and riverbanks, reducing the risk of erosion. Imagining soil as a living community brings clarity to the role of fungi. The ground beneath a forest or meadow is not static. It breathes, shifts, and evolves. Moisture moves through the spaces between particles. Minerals dissolve and are carried along by tiny currents. Organic matter breaks down into simpler components. Every layer contains life, from the microbial scale to the visible roots of plants. Fungal threads weave through all of this, connecting and supporting the organisms that depend on the soil. Their presence ensures that the ground remains fertile, flexible, and capable of supporting new growth. The evolution of soil over time reveals the subtle power of fungal activity. When a landscape is first exposed, after a landslide, a glacier retreat, or a volcanic eruption, the ground is often barren. Composed mainly of rock and mineral fragments, the first organisms to settle in such places are typically lichens, many of which contain fungi. These organisms release acids that slowly break down rock, creating the first grains of soil. As lichen fragments accumulate and decay, they provide organic matter that supports other forms of life. Fungi continue this process by digesting early plant remains, releasing nutrients that allow more complex vegetation to take root. As the plant community grows, fungi expand their influence. Hyphae move through the developing soil, binding particles into aggregates and breaking down dead material. Mycorrhizal networks connect the roots of pioneer plants, helping them survive in the shallow, nutrient-poor ground. Over decades or centuries, the soil deepens, becoming richer in organic matter and more capable of holding moisture. The landscape transforms from bare rock to a thriving ecosystem, guided by the patient work of fungi. The presence of fungi also influences the way water moves through soil. Hyphae create pathways that allow water to reach deeper layers, preventing runoff and increasing infiltration. This movement supports plants during dry periods and reduces the impact of heavy rains. By shaping water flow, fungi help maintain the delicate balance that keeps soil alive. Their threads act as silent engineers, guiding moisture through the ground in patterns that support resilience. Even in well-established forests, soil is constantly changing. Leaves fall, branches decay, roots die back, and new growth rises to take their place. Fungi orchestrate much of this transformation. They break down old material, releasing nutrients that feed new plants. They bind decaying matter into fresh aggregates, maintaining soil structure. They create networks that move minerals from one root system to another. The soil does not remain the same from year to year. It evolves slowly, shaped by the interactions of countless organisms, with fungi playing one of the most significant roles. Imagery of soil under fungal influence helps bring this hidden world to life. Picture moisture spreading through the dark spaces beneath fallen leaves, glistening on mineral surfaces. Imagine tiny fragments of organic matter softening as hyphae curl around them, weaving them into the beginnings of new soil. See the slow layering of particles, enriched by decomposed wood and leaf litter, forming a soft, fertile bed that supports roots and underground insects. The soil, though quiet and often overlooked, becomes a dynamic environment filled with movement and transformation. Fungi build soil not through force but through persistence. Their hyphae do not tear apart large structures. Instead, they work at microscopic scales, dissolving barriers, binding fragments, and creating order from loose collections of particles. Their actions accumulate over time, turning small changes into significant environmental shifts. A patch of ground rich in fungal activity feels different underfoot, spongier, cooler, and more fragrant. It holds moisture longer and resists erosion. It supports diverse plant life and provides habitat for countless organisms. The complexity of soil created by fungi is one of the foundations of terrestrial ecosystems. Without their work, the landscapes we know, forests, meadows, farmlands, and wetlands, would lose their vitality. They would become barren, compacted, and unable to support the diversity of life that depends on them. Fungi ensure that the ground remains fertile, absorbing the effects of environmental change and providing stability for plant communities. Through the quiet, patient movement of their threads, fungi shape the earth beneath every step. They transform rock into soil, soil into a living habitat, and that habitat into a foundation for ecosystems that stretch across continents. Their work unfolds slowly, guided by moisture, temperature, and the availability of nutrients. Yet the results endure for centuries, creating the fertile landscapes that support life in all its diversity. In this sense, fungi are not merely participants in soil ecosystems, they are builders. They construct the hidden infrastructure that allows life to take root, grow, and flourish. Their influence moves through every layer of the ground, shaping the earth with a gentleness that belies its impact. Through these threads, the world beneath our feet becomes a living, breathing network of relationships, all guided by the unseen work of fungi. Fungi have existed on Earth far longer than the forests, flowers, and familiar landscapes seen today. Their story stretches back into a time when the continents were bare, the air was harsh, and life was only beginning to explore the edges of land. In those ancient eras, fungi were among the first organisms capable of thriving outside the oceans. They arrived quietly, just as they do now, drifting as spores, settling on stone, and sending out threads that could dissolve minerals and extract nutrients from places where nothing else could survive. Their early presence shaped the direction of life on land, laying the groundwork for ecosystems that would later flourish. Hundreds of millions of years ago, Earth's surface was very different. Most landscapes were barren, dominated by rocky plains and shallow pools of water. The land lacked soil, and without soil, plants had little to anchor themselves to. Yet fungi found a foothold in this harsh environment. They spread across rocks, releasing acids that slowly broke down mineral surfaces. As they grew and died, their remains created the first thin layers of organic material. This early biological weathering transformed bare stone into the earliest forms of soil, providing the foundation for other organisms to colonize the land. In these early ecosystems, fungi played a central role in connecting life to land. Primitive photosynthetic organisms such as algae and cyanobacteria formed partnerships with fungi, resulting in the earliest lichens. These symbiotic teams were well suited to harsh conditions. Fungal threads absorbed moisture from the air, while the photosynthetic partner produced sugars for both organisms. Together, they clung to rock faces, slowly generating the organic matter needed to support larger forms of life. Over millions of years, their patient work created more stable environments where plants could eventually take root. As plant life began to appear on land, fungi formed partnerships that helped those early plants survive. Fossils from hundreds of millions of years ago reveal the presence of fungal structures within ancient plant tissues, showing that mycorrhizal relationships emerged early in Earth's history. These early plants lacked the complex root systems of modern species. Without assistance, they struggled to obtain minerals from the shallow, developing soils. Fungi solved this problem by extending their hyphae outward, gathering nutrients and delivering them to their plant partners. In return, the fungi received energy-rich compounds produced through photosynthesis. This exchange allowed plants to expand across land far more rapidly than they could have on their own. In the Devonian period, around 400 million years ago, an extraordinary organism dominated the landscape: Prototaxites. This giant tree-like structure was not a plant as once assumed, but a fungus, or at least a fungus-like organism. Some individuals reached heights of 6 or 7 meters, towering above the early plants that grew only a fraction of their size. Prototaxites stood alone on plains, dotted with small mosses and liverworts, absorbing nutrients from the ground and contributing to the earlier soil layers. Its towering presence reminds us that fungi were once the giants of Earth's surface, shaping environments long before trees evolved. These ancient giants eventually vanished as plants evolved taller forms and forests emerged. Yet the influence of fungi did not diminish. Instead, they adapted to the changing world, finding new roles within increasingly complex ecosystems. As forests developed, fungi became the primary decomposers of wood. They evolved enzymes capable of breaking down lignin, the tough material that strengthens plant cell walls. This breakthrough changed Earth's ecology dramatically. Without fungi, early forests would have become buried beneath their own remains, trapping carbon and halting nutrient cycles. Fungi prevented this by recycling fallen trunks and branches, returning their nutrients to the soil and maintaining the balance needed for forest ecosystems to thrive. The evolution of wood-decaying fungi had long-lasting effects on Earth's carbon cycle. Before fungi developed enzymes capable of breaking down lignin, dead trees accumulated and fossilized, contributing to coal deposits that formed during periods such as the Carboniferous. Once fungi evolved the ability to decompose lignified material, this accumulation slowed. Forests became dynamic systems of growth, death, and renewal. Carbon flowed through ecosystems more rapidly. Nutrients returned to the soil instead of being locked away for geological spans of time. Fungal evolution reshaped the planet's chemistry and influenced the trajectory of life. Fungi also participated in the evolution of plant diversity. By forming partnerships with roots, they allowed plants to access minerals and survive in challenging environments. This support enabled plants to expand across continents, adapt to dry conditions, and spread into new habitats. With fungal assistance, the first forests arose, creating shade, stabilizing soils, and supporting new forms of animal life. These forests brought dramatic changes to the atmosphere, releasing oxygen and drawing down carbon dioxide. Through these indirect influences, fungi shaped the evolution of the entire biosphere. Throughout Earth's deep history, fungi have moved quietly in the background, yet their influence has been profound. They survived multiple mass extinctions, adjusting to new climates and shifting continents. When volcanic eruptions darkened the skies and plant life faltered, fungi thrived on the decaying remains. When ice ages covered vast regions, fungal spores persisted in sheltered environments, waiting for warmth to return. Their resilience has allowed them to endure changes that caused many other lineages to disappear. Fossil evidence from ancient lake beds, amber deposits, and petrified forests reveals the steady presence of fungi throughout these shifting ages. Some fossils show networks of mycelium intertwined with plant roots, capturing moments of cooperation frozen in time. Others reveal spores drifting through ancient environments, travelling much as they do today. The persistence of these forms through geological layers demonstrates how little the fundamental structures of fungi have changed. Their strategies for survival, spore dispersal, external digestion, partnership with plants, have remained effective across hundreds of millions of years. The slow shifts in Earth's ecology often reflect fungal activity. As climates warmed or cooled, fungi adjusted their metabolism, continuing to recycle organic matter and support soil formation. Their decomposing abilities shaped nutrient flow, influencing which plants could survive in different regions. As animals evolved, fungi adapted to new opportunities, sometimes forming symbiotic relationships and sometimes becoming parasites. Their capacity to adjust without abandoning their fundamental strategies made them pivotal in countless evolutionary transitions. In many ways, fungi prepared the world for the rich biodiversity seen today. They helped create soil from barren rock, supported the spread of early land plants, enabled forests to flourish, and maintain nutrient cycles that sustain ecosystems. Their hidden work allowed landscapes to transform from lifeless plains into the complex environments that nourish millions of species. Imagining Earth's history through the lens of fungi reveals a world shaped not by sudden upheavals alone, but by slow, persistent processes, hyphae creeping through ancient rock, lichens softening stone into soil, giant fungal pillars rising above early plants, mycorrhizal networks supporting the first forests. These quiet movements and partnerships forged the conditions that allowed life to diversify and expand. Even today, fungi remain connected to their ancient past. The hyphae that thread through modern soil follow patterns similar to those of their ancestors. The relationships between fungi and plants still mirror the alliances that first appeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Each mushroom rising on a forest floor carries within it a lineage older than the trees around it. Fungi have been companions to life since its earliest experiments on land. Through patience, persistence, and adaptability, they shaped the environments that allowed plants, animals, and entire ecosystems to evolve. Their story is a reminder that some of the most influential forces in nature work slowly, quietly, and just out of sight, leaving a mark not through spectacle, but through steady, enduring presence across deep time. Fungi express themselves through chemistry in ways that are subtle, intricate, and deeply woven into the history of life. Where plants use colour to attract pollinators and animals use movement or sound to communicate, fungi rely on molecules, pigments, scents, enzymes, toxins, and medicines to interact with the world around them. These chemical creations help fungi defend themselves, digest food, form partnerships, and shape ecosystems. Over centuries, humans have learned to make use of many of these compounds, often without knowing that fungi were quietly guiding the process. Pigments are among the most visible products of fungal chemistry. Many fungi produce colours that seem surprising for organisms that spend much of their lives in darkness. Orange, red, violet, green, and blue tones appear on their caps, stems, and spores. These pigments can signal defense, reflect light, or protect delicate cells from environmental stress. Some pigments deter animals from eating them, while others help fungi manage reactive oxygen produced during metabolism. These colours bring gentle visual variety to forest floors, turning decaying logs into palettes of soft, earthy tones. Scents are another chemical signature of fungal life. When people smell a forest after rain, much of the earthy aroma comes from compounds created by fungi and bacteria, working together in the soil. Mushrooms themselves release subtle fragrances that range from sweet and fruity to metallic or spicy. These scents attract insects that help disperse spores, communicate readiness to reproduce, or simply reflect the chemical reactions unfolding within their tissues. The scent of truffles, prized for centuries, is one of the clearest examples of fungal chemistry influencing both animal behaviour and human culture. Truffles produce aromatic molecules that mimic natural signals used by mammals, drawing animals to dig them up and spread their spores. Over time, humans learn to seek them out for entirely different reasons. Their rich, complex flavours. Enzymes lie at the heart of fungal chemistry. These specialised molecules allow fungi to break down materials far more efficiently than animals or plants can. Some enzymes dissolve lignin, the stubborn component of wood that makes trees strong. Others break apart cellulose, allowing fungi to extract energy from plant fibres. Still others target proteins, fats, or complex organic molecules found in leaves, insects, and soil. These enzymes operate like finely tuned tools, working in the shadows to transform tough materials into nutrients. Their presence in soil creates a constant, gentle turnover of organic matter that enriches ecosystems. Among the most famous chemical gifts from fungi are antibiotics. Penicillin, the first widely used antibiotic, was discovered when the mold Penicillium notatum produced a compound that killed surrounding bacteria. This moment transformed medicine. Although the discovery happened by chance, the underlying chemistry had existed in fungi for millions of years. Fungi use antibiotics to defend themselves against bacteria that compete for the same food sources. Humans simply learned how to harness these molecules to treat infections. After penicillin, other antimicrobial compounds followed, many derived from fungal species living in soil or decaying wood. Their chemistry continues to inspire modern pharmaceuticals. Fungal toxins, though sometimes harmful, serve ecological purposes. These chemicals protect fungi from being eaten, regulate interactions with other organisms, or deter pathogens. Some toxins cause mild irritation when touched or ingested, while others influence the nervous systems of insects or animals. Even in these potent compounds, the chemistry is precise rather than chaotic. Each molecule has evolved through delicate adjustments that help the fungus survive. Understanding this chemistry has allowed humans to identify which mushrooms are safe and which should be avoided, reinforcing the idea that fungi communicate through chemistry rather than movement or sound. Fermentation showcases the relationship between fungi and human culture in one of its most familiar forms. Yeasts, a type of microscopic fungus, carry out the chemical process that gives rise to bread, wine, beer, cheese, and numerous traditional foods. In bread making, yeast consumes sugars and produces carbon dioxide, causing the dough to rise. In winemaking and brewing, yeast transforms sugars into alcohol, shaping flavors that have been enjoyed for thousands of years. In cheese and soy foods, fungi contribute to the breakdown of proteins and fats, producing aromas, textures, and tastes that define entire cuisines. Through fermentation, fungal chemistry has quietly shaped daily life across cultures, turning simple ingredients into foods with lasting significance. Explaining fungal chemistry without symbols or equations can be done by imagining it as a conversation, spoken in molecules instead of words. When a fungus encounters a log, it releases enzymes like keys that fit into the structure of wood, unlocking nutrients. When it meets bacteria in the soil, it produces antibiotics like firm but quiet boundaries, marking its space. When it forms a partnership with plant roots, it communicates through chemical signals that coordinate the flow of nutrients. These exchanges happen on scales too small to see, yet they guide the growth of forests, shape the flavor of foods, and maintain the health of ecosystems. The cultural impact of fungal chemistry extends beyond food and medicine. Dyes derived from fungi have been used in textiles, artwork, and traditional crafts. Certain pigments produce rich purples, yellows, and browns that remain stable for years. These natural dyes reflect the quiet creativity of fungal metabolism. Scents from truffles, cheeses, and fermented foods have shaped culinary traditions across continents. Even the decomposition of plant materials through fungal chemistry influences agriculture by enriching soils used to grow crops. The relationship between fungi and humans is intimate not because of physical proximity, but because fungal chemistry intersects with everyday life. Bread rising in a warm kitchen, the scent of soil after rainfall, the antibiotics in a medicine cabinet, the flavor of aged cheese. These experiences are all shaped by the molecules fungi produce. Their chemistry feels familiar because it has been part of human existence for millennia, woven into traditions and practical knowledge. The comforting aspect of fungal chemistry lies in its constancy. While the surface of life changes, new technologies emerge, landscapes shift, cultures evolve, the chemical partnerships between fungi and their environments remain steady. Yeasts continue to ferment grains and fruits as they have done for untold generations. Soil fungi continue to break down organic matter, using enzymes perfected long before humans appeared. The same pigments that coloured ancient forests continue to colour mushrooms today. This continuity offers a kind of reassurance, as though fungi have been companions walking alongside humanity through time. Even the more mysterious aspects of fungal chemistry carry a sense of gentle wonder. Bioluminescent fungi glow softly in the dark because of chemical reactions involving luciferin compounds. These reactions resemble the natural light produced by fireflies and some marine organisms. In forests at night, the faint glow of fungi can create an atmosphere that feels otherworldly yet peaceful. The chemistry is not harsh or alarming, it is subtle, appearing only in darkness and fading with the dawn. Imagining a world without fungal chemistry highlights how essential it is. Without fungal enzymes, wood would accumulate faster than it decayed. Forest floors would become cluttered with layers of material that no other organism could break down. Without antibiotics, bacterial infections would be far more dangerous. Without fermentation, many foods and beverages would lose their unique flavours and textures. The absence of fungal pigments would make forests less colourful, and the absence of fungal scents would change the aroma of soil after rain. Life would be recognisably different, lacking many familiar comforts. The chemistry of fungi is a quiet but powerful force. It shapes ecosystems, supports human culture, and reveals the ingenuity of organisms that work mostly unseen. Their molecules act like threads connecting different aspects of a life: food, medicine, soil, and ecology, with a steady, persistent influence. Through their chemistry, fungi continue to play roles that are both ancient and modern, reminding us that the smallest processes can have the greatest impact. In this way, fungal chemistry becomes not just a scientific topic but a story of companionship. Humans have grown alongside fungi for thousands of years, learning from their abilities and benefiting from their creations. Their chemistry has nourished, healed, flavoured, and protected. It has shaped the world gently, molecule by molecule, in ways that continue to sustain life today. Fungal spores often seem like the smallest and lightest of biological particles, drifting unnoticed through the world. Yet these tiny structures play roles that extend far beyond forests and soil. They rise into the atmosphere, move with wind currents, drift through clouds, and contribute to the formation of rain. Although each spore is nearly weightless, together they help shape weather patterns, influence rainfall in forests, and connect the sky to the living world below. Their journey through the air reveals a quiet but powerful link between the biology of the ground and the behaviour of the atmosphere. When fungi release spores, they often do so in astonishing numbers. A single mushroom can release millions of them, sending them upward on the slightest currents of air. Some spores lift only a short distance above the forest floor. Others catch rising currents created by warm air and drift higher, climbing through the canopy toward open sky. In the right conditions, spores can rise several kilometers, entering the lower layers of the atmosphere. At these heights, they float among dust particles, pollen grains, and droplets of moisture. They become part of a vast airborne community that influences clouds and precipitation. Once spores reach the atmosphere, they act as seeds for raindrops. Water vapor alone cannot form raindrops. It needs microscopic particles to cling to. Spores provide surfaces that attract moisture. When water vapor condenses on them, tiny droplets begin to grow. As more water accumulates, the droplets become heavier and eventually fall as rain. This process, known as nucleation, is essential for precipitation. Spores are particularly effective nucleation sites because their surfaces are often textured and hydrophilic, providing ideal conditions for condensation. Forests play a significant role in sending spores skyward. When wind moves through trees, turbulence lifts spores into the air. Moisture from leaves, soil, and fungal networks creates microclimates that support spore release. During periods of high humidity, many fungi release spores more readily. The resulting cloud of microscopic particles enriches the atmosphere above forested areas, influencing how clouds form and how often they produce rain. This connection between forests and rainfall helps maintain stable climates in regions where forests dominate the landscape. The influence of fungi on weather is especially noticeable in tropical rainforests. These ecosystems rely on nearly constant moisture, and fungal networks contribute to this stability. As spores rise into the atmosphere, they become part of the cycle that returns water to the forest floor. When clouds form above the canopy, they often contain droplets condensed around biological particles, including spores. As these clouds release rain, water returns to the soil, supporting the fungi that will eventually produce new spores. This cycle tightly links the biology of the forest with the meteorology above it. Even in temperate regions, spores play a role in precipitation. During autumn, when mushrooms appear in abundance, spore release can create a temporary increase in atmospheric particles. These particles encourage the formation of mist and low clouds, adding a soft, hazy quality to seasonal weather. The gentle fog that collects in valleys and forests may owe some of its formation to fungal activity, though its presence feels like a natural part of the seasonal shift rather than something driven by biology. The global movement of spores within storm systems is another remarkable aspect of their influence on weather. Wind currents can lift spores from forests, deserts, and grasslands and carry them across continents and oceans. Storms, with their powerful upward drafts, can transport spores thousands of kilometers. Some spores survive within the cold, turbulent environment of storm clouds, protected by their resilient outer layers. As the storm moves across the landscape, the spores travel with it. When the storm releases rain, spores settle back onto the ground, sometimes far from their point of origin. This long-distance dispersal helps fungi colonize new areas. It also means that the biological particles influencing weather in one region may have originated in another storm's act as carriers, gathering spores from one ecosystem and depositing them in another. The movement of these particles adds subtle variations to cloud formation and rainfall patterns across large geographic regions. Although the effects are small compared to major weather systems, they contribute to the fine texture of atmospheric behavior. The connection between fungal spores and weather patterns highlights the delicate interplay between sky and soil. The atmosphere is not separate from the living world. It is shaped by it. Clouds form around particles that come from forests, fields, and oceans. Rain falls in patterns influenced by the microscopic life drifting above the canopy. When water returns to the ground, it nourishes the organisms that will eventually send new spores into the air. This cycle creates a gentle feedback loop between the living and physical aspects of the planet. Imagining spores rising from a forest floor helps visualize this process. A mushroom releases a cloud of nearly invisible particles that lift into the air. They drift upward, gliding through shafts of sunlight. Some settle on leaves or soil. Others continue rising, joining currents of warm air. At higher altitudes, they encounter cooler temperatures and greater moisture. Water molecules condense on their surfaces, forming tiny droplets. As the droplets grow, they begin to fall, bringing water back to the forest. These scenes of mist and drifting moisture carry a sense of calm. On early mornings, Fog often gathers among the trees, softening the landscape. The interplay of spores, humidity, and temperature contributes to this gentle effect, creating moments of quiet beauty. The moisture in the air feels cool and refreshing. The forest breathes in soft rhythms, shaped by the invisible chemistry of fungi and the ever-changing movement of the atmosphere. Fungal spores also influence weather in agricultural regions. In fields and pastures, fungi thrive on crops, grasses, and soil. Their spores rise during ploughing, harvest, or after rain. These spores join the atmospheric particles that influence cloud formation. While the contribution is small, it adds to the mosaic of biological and environmental interactions that determine local weather. Even urban environments contain fungal spores that enter the air through disturbed soil, decomposing leaves, and buildings where fungi grow in damp spaces. These spores too become part of the atmospheric community, linking cities to the natural world. The resilience of spores allows them to endure harsh conditions in the atmosphere. They can survive ultraviolet radiation, freezing temperatures, and low oxygen levels. Their walls are designed to protect the genetic material inside, giving them the ability to remain viable through long journeys. When they finally settle to the ground, they may land on environments suitable for germination, or wait until conditions improve. This resilience reinforces their role in weather systems, allowing them to remain active participants throughout their atmospheric journey. The presence of spores in clouds also influences the type of precipitation that forms. In cold clouds, spores can act as ice nuclei, prompting water droplets to freeze. The formation of ice crystals affects the development of snow, sleet, and rain. Once again, fungal particles engage with atmospheric processes in ways that are subtle yet significant. Through these interactions, fungi leave an imprint not only on the ground beneath them but on the sky above. When imagining weather patterns, it is common to think of them as purely physical processes: wind, temperature, pressure, and moisture. Yet biology plays an understated role in shaping how these processes unfold. Fungal spores demonstrate that the boundary between living organisms and atmospheric dynamics is porous. The sky carries the imprint of forests and soil. The ground, in turn, receives water shaped partly by the presence of fungal particles in the air. The gentle interconnectedness of sky and soil becomes evident when considering these relationships. A breeze carrying spores upward, moisture condensing around microscopic particles, rain returning to nourish the ground, new mushrooms rising after a storm, spores releasing again into the air. This cycle repeats quietly, season after season, forming a bridge between the visible world of forests and the invisible architecture of clouds. Through their persistent release of spores, fungi influence weather in ways that feel both delicate and far-reaching. They contribute to rainfall patterns, help shape clouds, and participate in the global movement of moisture. Their interactions with the atmosphere reveal an aspect of nature that is easy to overlook but essential to the planet's balance. In this way, fungi remind us that even the smallest particles can affect the larger systems. Their spores drift upward into the sky, become part of clouds, shape raindrops, and return to the soil. Through these cycles, they help connect Earth's surface with the atmosphere, creating a quiet harmony that sustains life. Among all the organisms on Earth, some of the largest are not whales, trees, coral reefs, or towering stands of bamboo, but fungi woven silently beneath the forest floor. These giants, known as honey fungi, stretch across vast distances in networks of mycelium so subtle and quiet that they remain invisible to anyone walking above. Their bodies do not rise into the air or show themselves in sweeping movements. Instead, they live horizontally, branching through soil, wood, and stone, forming some of the most expansive living structures ever recorded. Their size is measured not in height or weight, but in the patient reach of their threads. The honey fungus, belonging to the genus Armillaria, is famous for producing golden mushrooms in autumn. Yet these mushrooms represent only a tiny fraction of the organism. The true body, the mycelium, lies hidden underground, weaving through roots and fallen wood. In some forests, a single individual may span several kilometers, making it larger in area than any animal and older than the oldest trees growing above it. These organisms grow slowly, gaining ground year after year, often unnoticed for centuries. The discovery of these fungal giants began with observations of trees dying in patterns that suggested a hidden cause. Foresters noticed that groups of trees in certain areas appeared weakened or decaying, even though no obvious disease was present above ground. When researchers examined the roots, they found the same fungus colonizing multiple trees. At first, they assumed different parts of the forest contained separate fungi of the same species. But as scientists compared samples, they found identical genetic markers. What appeared to be many individuals was in fact one single organism spreading quietly through the soil. Genetic sequencing confirmed these findings. Scientists collected samples from different points across a region and compared their DNA. When large areas revealed identical genetic fingerprints, it became clear that the mycelium belonged to a single organism. Mapping these findings helped researchers trace the boundaries of the fungi, revealing sizes that stretched across hillsides, valleys, and entire forest stands. In some cases, the mycelial networks extended across more than 2,000 acres. These discoveries reshaped the understanding of what a large organism could be. These immense fungi can grow so large partly because of the structure of their bodies. Mycelium is composed of countless filaments, each capable of branching, joining, dividing, and adapting as conditions change. Unlike animals, fungi do not rely on a central organ system. There is no heart, lungs, or brain limiting how far the organism can expand. Mycelial networks spread wherever nutrients, moisture, and space allow. They grow outward from many points simultaneously, adjusting to obstacles and navigating through soil in patterns that mimic flow rather than fixed construction. This flexibility makes it possible for a single organism to occupy enormous areas. The fungus does not need to maintain a continuous mass. Instead, it sends threads through soil, creating a network of microscopic pathways. Some of these threads thicken into rhizomorphs, dark root-like structures that act as highways for nutrients. These rhizomorphs allow the fungus to travel quickly through the ground, connecting distant areas of its body and allowing it to access food sources located far apart. Through these networks, a honey fungus coordinates its growth across whole landscapes, responding to environmental changes over great distances. The longevity of these fungal giants also contributes to their size. Armillaria species can live for thousands of years. Their slow, steady growth allows them to accumulate territory gradually, decade after decade. While trees rise, fall, and decompose within a few centuries, the fungus beneath them persists. It endures changing climates, shifting plant communities, and disturbances such as fires or storms. After a tree falls, the fungus absorbs nutrients from the decaying wood, supporting new growth that extends the network even further. In this way, the organism becomes a long-term resident of the forest, outlasting many generations of plants and animals. Despite their enormous size, these fungi remain nearly invisible. On the forest floor, a walker sees only soil, leaves, and the occasional mushroom cap. The complexity beneath remains hidden. A few clues reveal their presence. Dark, rope-like rhizomorphs beneath the bark of fallen trees, or white mats of mycelium glowing faintly against decaying wood. These subtle signs show the reach of the organism, but they do not convey its full extent. The mycelium itself is thin as a thread, white and delicate, blending into the soil and roots around it. Even in daylight, the fungus hides behind layers of organic matter and mineral grains. Imagining the scale of these organisms requires shifting perspective. Instead of picturing a single large body, imagine a network, fine threads flowing through the earth like rivers underground. Picture them moving past pebbles, curling around roots, and entering decaying wood. Visualize the network spreading outward, encountering patches of rich soil and dry areas, adjusting direction in response to moisture and temperature. Over hundreds of years, these threads extend in all directions, forming a living map of the forest beneath the surface. The forest floor becomes a kind of quiet ceiling above this fungal world. Trees rise and fall, but beneath them the mycelium persists in near constant darkness. Animals walk above without sensing the giant beneath their feet. Rain trickles down through soil, nourishing the network. Leaves fall, decompose, and become part of the fungus's nutrient supply. The surface changes with seasons, greens in summer, golds in autumn, whites in winter, while below the fungus maintains a slow, steady rhythm. The hidden scale of these fungi raises reflections about the nature of size and presence in the natural world. Humans tend to identify large organisms through their physical height or weight. Trees stretch upward, whales move through oceans, and elephants walk across plains. These forms are visible and monumental. Fungi, by contrast, express their size horizontally and invisibly. Their presence is not measured in towering trunks or massive bodies, but in networks woven through the earth. Their vastness is sensed only through careful study or imagination. This subtlety adds a layer of wonder to forests. It suggests that much of the world's biological richness lies out of sight, just beneath the surface. A gentle landscape of moss and leaves may hide an organism older than any tree nearby. A hillside covered in pine needles may conceal a network that has existed since long before recorded history. The idea that one organism can quietly shape an entire forest without ever revealing itself changes the way the environment is perceived. It encourages a sense of humility, a recognition that the visible world is only one part of the ecosystem. Understanding the scale of these fungal giants also highlights their role in forest ecology. Honey fungi decompose wood, recycle nutrients, and influence the health of trees. Some species act as pathogens, infecting weakened trees and accelerating their decay. Others help maintain balance within forests by removing old or stressed vegetation. Through these actions, they shape the structure of plant communities. Their size and longevity allow them to influence ecosystems over long periods, guiding the transformation of forest through cycles of growth and decline. Contemplating the patience of these organisms brings another layer of appreciation. Honey fungi do not grow quickly. Their expansions are measured in centimeters per year, sometimes less. Yet over centuries, these small increments accumulate into remarkable size. Their existence reminds us that growth does not need to be rapid to be significant. Slow processes can shape entire landscapes when given time. Walking through a forest where one of these giants lives offers a quiet sense of connection. Every step touches soil threaded with life. Each fallen log or decaying stump may hold part of the network. The mushrooms that appear briefly in autumn represent only a momentary glimpse of something far older and larger. Observing them is like seeing the edge of an enormous tapestry woven beneath the ground. These fungal giants are not just large organisms, they are reminders of nature's hidden scales. They reveal that life extends across dimensions beyond what the eye perceives. They demonstrate how subtle growth, patience and persistence can create structures that endure for millennia. Through them, the forest becomes a place where visible and invisible worlds overlap, connected through the slow, steady work of mycelium spreading quietly through the earth. In recognizing their presence, a new perspective emerges, one that acknowledges the vastness that lies just beneath the surface, hidden in stillness, shaping the world in silence and stretching across time in ways that challenge ordinary measures of size. Fungi have accompanied humans for so long and in so many quiet ways that most people move through daily life without noticing how deeply intertwined these worlds truly are. From the bread on a table to the soil beneath a garden, from ancient medical discoveries to modern biotechnology, fungi form an invisible thread that runs through human culture, comfort, and survival. Their presence surrounds the routines of everyday life, shaping experiences with a steadiness that feels almost familiar, like a companion that never demands attention, yet never truly steps away. In kitchens, fungi perform some of their most recognizable roles. Yeast, a microscopic fungus, is responsible for the soft rise of bread dough. When yeast consumes sugars, it releases tiny bubbles of carbon dioxide, creating airy structures within the dough. This process, simple yet transformative, has nourished communities for thousands of years. In breweries and wineries, yeast ferments grains and fruits, producing beverages that have held cultural, ceremonial, and social significance throughout history. In cheese-making, molds create flavors and textures impossible to achieve without fungal chemistry. These processes rely on fungi working steadily, converting ingredients into foods that have become staples around the world. Beyond food, fungi have changed human health in profound ways. The discovery of penicillin, derived from a mold, marked a turning point in medicine before antibiotics. Infections that are now easily treated posed life-threatening dangers. Penicillin and other fungal-derived compounds paved the way for modern antimicrobial treatments, saving countless lives. Even now, fungi continue to inspire new medicines used to manage cholesterol, suppress immune responses during transplants, and treat infections. Their chemical diversity remains a source of potential treatments waiting to be uncovered. Agriculture also depends heavily on fungi, mycorrhizal networks attached to the roots of crops, helping them absorb nutrients and water. These partnerships strengthen plants, improving yields and resilience. In many farming systems, the presence of healthy fungal communities in the soil is essential for maintaining fertility. Without fungi breaking down organic matter and releasing nutrients, fields would become barren. Farmers sometimes inoculate soils with beneficial fungi to support plant growth, demonstrating an intentional partnership that mirrors natural processes. In textile and craft traditions, fungi contribute dyes and pigments that create colors ranging from soft yellows to deep purples. Certain mushrooms have been used for centuries to produce natural dyes for fabrics, yarns, and artwork. Their pigments, drawn from the subtle chemistry within fungal cells, add an organic richness to materials. These dyeing traditions connect modern artisans to historical practices, continuing a relationship between humans and fungi that spans generations. Biotechnology has brought fungi into new roles. Scientists use fungal enzymes to create detergents that work at lower temperatures, reducing energy consumption. Other enzymes derived from fungi break down plant materials to produce biofuels. Fungal cells are used to synthesize vitamins, process waste, and produce industrial chemicals. Their ability to grow rapidly, adapt to changing conditions, and generate complex molecules makes them valuable tools in modern science. Even fabrics and packaging materials are now being developed from fungal mycelium, offering biodegradable alternatives to plastics. Through these innovations, fungi help guide the shift toward more sustainable technologies. Cultural histories reveal how deeply fungi have influenced human life. From traditional fermentation techniques passed down through families to the use of medicinal fungi in ancient practices, fungal knowledge sits at the heart of many traditions. In some cultures, mushrooms are symbols of renewal, appearing after rain. In others, they represent mystery due to their sudden emergence and hidden networks. The use of fermented foods, truffles, and aged cheeses reflect culinary histories shaped by fungi long before the science behind these processes was understood. Even myths and folklore include fungi, attributing magical qualities to their unusual shapes, rapid growth, or luminous displays at night. The presence of fungi extends into homes in quiet ways. Molds may grow in damp corners, reminding people that fungi thrive in humid spaces. Yeast cells linger on the surfaces of fruits and grains stored in kitchens. The air itself contains numerous fungal spores that drift in from outside. While some encounters with indoor fungi require management, many others go unnoticed, forming part of the invisible environment shared with countless microorganisms. Gardens rely heavily on fungi, whether gardeners realize it or not. Soil fungi help break down leaf litter, create structure within the soil, and form partnerships with plant roots. When gardeners add compost to enrich their soil, they support fungal communities that in turn support plant health. Mushrooms that appear after rain indicate that the underground soil network is active, even if gardeners never see the mycelium beneath the surface. Its presence helps sustain the cycles of growth and decay that make gardens flourish. Fungi exist not only around humans but also within them. On skin, in digestive systems, and throughout the respiratory tract, fungal species live alongside bacteria and other microorganisms. These communities form part of the human microbiome, contributing to digestion, immunity, and overall health. Most of these fungi cause no harm and live in balance with their human hosts. Their presence reflects a long evolutionary history of shared living spaces. Maintaining this balance keeps both humans and fungi healthy, illustrating another layer of interconnectedness. The companionship between humans and fungi becomes even clearer when considering how often fungi participate in experiences that create comfort or belonging. A loaf of freshly baked bread, a steaming bowl of miso soup, a favourite cheese on a quiet evening, the earthy scent of soil after rain. These everyday moments feel ordinary, yet fungi play essential roles in each one. Their work remains mostly unseen, happening in kitchens, fields, forests, and within the soil beneath homes. The familiarity of these experiences creates a sense of continuity between past and present, linking modern life to ancient traditions. Even the presence of fungi in wild spaces has shaped human relationships with the natural world. foraging traditions rely on knowledge of mushrooms that can be eaten, preserved, or used for medicine. These practices connect families and communities to forests and meadows, encouraging respect for local ecosystems. Careful identification, passed down through generations, reflects a deep understanding of fungal diversity. These traditions highlight the delicate balance between curiosity and caution, demonstrating how humans have learned to navigate the world of fungi through experience and shared wisdom. Fungi also provide important ecological services that indirectly support human life. They break down dead plant material, returning nutrients to the soil. They help regulate carbon cycles by storing carbon underground. They create and maintain soil structure, which supports agriculture and prevents erosion. Forest ecosystems rely heavily on fungal networks to move nutrients, maintain moisture, and support tree health. Humans depend on these ecosystems for air, water, materials, and food. Even though fungi work silently, their influence underpins the environments that support human civilization. Reflecting on these layers of connection reveals the constant presence of fungi in daily life. They rise with bread, settle as spores in the air, enrich soil, form part of ancient medical knowledge, and weave through cultural traditions. They move through human homes, bodies, gardens, and forests. They shape technologies and industries. They help sustain ecosystems humans rely on, forming relationships that feel both delicate and enduring. Despite their importance, fungi rarely demand acknowledgement. Their work unfolds quietly, without spectacle. They appear in small, gentle moments, steam rising from freshly baked bread, soil crumbling between fingers, the earthy smell after rain, the soft bloom of mold on forgotten fruit. These moments offer reminders that humans share their world with organisms that operate on different timescales, using chemistry and patience to support life. In the end, the connection between humans and fungi is not defined by dramatic events or singular discoveries. It is woven through centuries of coexistence, shaped by mutual influence and shared environments. Fungi help create the conditions humans need to thrive, and humans in turn cultivate, observe, and depend on fungal life. This partnership, though often unnoticed, forms a quiet foundation for much of human experience. Through this lens, fungi become more than background organisms. They become companions, steady, resilient, and deeply connected to the rhythms of daily life. They remind us that even the smallest threads can support entire worlds, and that the most powerful influences often work in silence, shaping the fabric of existence with patience and subtlety. The future of the fungal world is unfolding quietly, much like the organisms themselves. It is not arriving in sudden leaps or dramatic upheavals, but through gentle innovations, subtle discoveries, and the slow weaving of fungal abilities into human technology and environmental care. As researchers study mycelium, the branching thread-like body of fungi, they continue to uncover possibilities that feel both practical and profoundly hopeful. These possibilities suggest a future where fungi play central roles in sustainability, healing, manufacturing, and ecological restoration, shaping a world that leans toward gentleness, patience, and renewal. One of the most promising areas of development involves mycelium-based materials. These materials are created by allowing fungal mycelium to grow through agricultural waste such as straw, sawdust, or corn husks. As the mycelium spreads, it binds the particles together into a solid, foam-like structure. When the desired strength is reached, the material is dried to halt growth. The result is lightweight, durable, biodegradable and incredibly versatile. Mycelium materials can be molded into shapes for packaging, furniture, insulation, building blocks, and even clothing. Mycelium packaging, for example, is already being used as an alternative to plastic foam. It absorbs impacts gently, breaks down harmlessly in compost, and requires far less energy to produce. Mycelium insulation offers strong thermal properties and resist fire without chemical treatments. Building materials made from mycelium can be grown in place, allowing structures to emerge through biological processes rather than heavy industrial manufacturing. Designers experimenting with mycelium-based textiles have produced soft, leather-like fabrics that feel warm and organic, offering a sustainable alternative to traditional leather or synthetic materials. These materials capture the essence of fungal growth: patience, adaptability, and unity. Instead of relying on machines to press, mold, or fuse, the material grows itself slowly and quietly. It becomes strong not through force, but through connection, as hyphae weave through particles to form a cohesive whole. This gentle method of manufacturing offers a vision of a future where human creations arise through partnership with living systems rather than the extraction and exhaustion of resources. Fungi also hold remarkable potential for environmental repair. Their ability to break down complex molecules makes them natural candidates for cleaning polluted soils. Certain species can absorb heavy metals or degrade chemicals that persist in the environment. Through mycoremediation, the use of fungi to clean contaminated areas, researchers have successfully treated soils polluted with oil, pesticides, and industrial chemicals. Fungi release enzymes capable of transforming these substances into simpler, less harmful compounds, gradually healing environments damaged by human activity. Some fungi can even break down plastics. While not all plastics respond to fungal enzymes, several species have been shown to digest polyurethane and other synthetic materials. This discovery points toward new ways of addressing plastic waste, one of the most significant environmental challenges of the modern world. Although mycoremediation of plastics is still in early stages, the potential is substantial. Fungi could one day become part of a global effort to reduce pollution, helping to transform waste into materials that return to the soil without causing harm. Restoring damaged landscapes represents another area where fungi can contribute meaningfully. After forest fires, landslides, or mining operations, the soil often becomes barren and unstable. Introducing fungi can accelerate recovery as mycelium stabilizes soil, retains moisture, and encourages the return of plants. In some restoration projects, fungal spores are mixed into seed balls or soil amendments that help re-establish ecosystems. The fungi act as early settlers, preparing the ground for the complex communities that follow. Their presence improves the chances of successful reforestation, making landscapes more resilient to future disturbances. Beyond environmental repair, fungi continue to inspire breakthroughs in biotechnology. Their chemical diversity offers a treasure trove of potential medicines. Researchers explore fungal metabolites, the molecules they produce naturally, in search of new antibiotics, anti-cancer agents, and compounds that may support immune health. Just as penicillin emerged from a simple mold, future medicines may come from species that have yet to be studied. Some fungi produce chemicals that inhibit tumor growth. Others synthesize molecules that help manage cholesterol or inflammation. Many more remain unexplored, their potential waiting in quiet forests and soils around the world. Fungal enzymes also hold value for sustainable manufacturing. industries that rely on chemical processes, such as paper production, textiles, and biofuel creation, are beginning to incorporate enzymes that function efficiently at low temperatures and require fewer harsh chemicals. Using fungal enzymes can reduce environmental impact, making production processes more gentle and less wasteful. These enzymes help break down plant fibers, convert biomass into fuel, and process natural materials into textiles. Each application demonstrates how fungi's natural abilities can guide human industries toward cleaner, softer methods. The structure of fungal networks has also inspired technological innovations. Mycelial networks are decentralized, resilient, and efficient at exploring their surroundings. They distribute resources without relying on a central control point, adapting to environmental changes through simple but effective rules of growth. This behavior has inspired algorithms for transportation planning, computer networking, and urban design. Engineers study how fungal networks find efficient paths through complex environments, applying these patterns to solve human challenges. The resemblance between mycelial growth and certain problem-solving algorithms highlights the intelligence embedded in natural systems. The idea that fungi might shape future technologies invites a broader reflection about how people design and build. Fungal networks suggest that systems do not need rigid hierarchies to function well. They show that structures can grow organically, responding to feedback from the environment. They demonstrate that resilience comes from flexibility and connection, rather than fixed forms. By observing fungi, humans learn that problem-solving can be fluid, decentralized, and adaptive, qualities that could transform how societies build infrastructure, organize information, or manage resources. Looking forward, fungi may also help shape a future that prioritizes gentleness and sustainability. Their growth requires little energy and produces little waste. Their chemistry works quietly, dissolving barriers instead of forcing them open. Their networks support life without dominating it. These qualities align with visions of a world where manufacturing is less harmful, where materials return to the earth without causing damage, and where biological processes guide human choices. Even within homes, the future may include more fungal companions, mycelium-based air filters, biodegradable packaging, fungal cleaning agents, and sustainable household materials may become more common. Gardens may use fungal inoculants to improve soil health. Food systems may rely more heavily on fermented goods and mushroom-based proteins. Each of these shifts reflects a growing appreciation for fungi's ability to contribute to daily life in gentle, effective ways. As climate change intensifies, fungi may offer paths toward resilience. Their ability to stabilize soil, store carbon, and support plant communities becomes increasingly important. Mycelial networks help forests retain moisture during droughts, support tree roots during heat waves, and recycle nutrients following storms. These ecosystem services make forests, grasslands, and even agricultural lands more capable of enduring environmental change. In this sense, fungi become quiet guardians of landscapes, helping buffer ecosystems against the effects of a warming world. Looking toward the future, the partnership between humans and fungi feels poised to deepen. The innovations unfolding today reflect only a small portion of fungi's potential. As more is learned about their chemistry, structure, and ecological roles, new applications will emerge, some practical, some unexpected, and some transformative. These discoveries will not arrive with fanfare. They will grow the way fungi grow, slowly, steadily, expanding in quiet arcs, till a new shape takes form. considering this future brings a sense of hope. Fungi show that renewal is possible, even in damaged environments. They show that strength can come from networks rather than force, and that solutions may arise from partnership rather than extraction. They offer ways to create materials that return to the earth, methods to heal polluted ground, and inspiration for technologies that adapt rather than dominate. As the chapter of the fungal world continues to unfold, it carries with it a gentle message that the future does not need to be built through struggle. It can grow through connection, patience, and the quiet intelligence of organisms that have been shaping the world for hundreds of millions of years. Fungi invite a future where human ingenuity works alongside natural processes, creating a world that is softer, wiser, and more deeply rooted in the rhythms of life. The world of fungi stretches so far beneath the surface of things that returning to this quiet moment can feel like waking gently from a long wandering dream. You're back now, sitting or lying wherever you are, breathing softly, surrounded by the small sounds of your own space. Yet the threads of that hidden kingdom linger, weaving themselves into the edges of your thoughts, like the slow, drifting hyphae beneath a forest floor. Over the course of this journey, you have moved through places most people never see. You have followed the delicate bodies of fungi as they spread like pale threads through soil, binding the ground into something soft, airy, and alive. You have watched them dissolve wood into richness, turn fallen leaves into food for future life, and build entire landscapes from the barest traces of organic matter. These patient recyclers work silently, without rush or recognition, ensuring that ecosystems continue their steady rhythm of growth, decay, and renewal. You have seen fungi in their role as ancient world builders, arriving on land long before forests existed, softening stone into soil grain by grain. You have watched giant fungal organisms tower over primitive landscapes, standing like solitary sentinels in a world still learning how to breathe. Their influence shaped the earliest environments, preparing the stage for plants, animals, and all the complicated life that would one day fill Earth with colour and movement. Their work was slow, unhurried, and extraordinarily persistent, a kind of quiet determination that reshaped the planet over hundreds of millions of years. Along the way, you drifted through the strange adaptations fungi have perfected. Some glow softly in the darkness. Others digest rock or thrive in deserts, glaciers, and radioactive ruins. A few even guide the behaviour of insects with an uncanny precision that feels almost like choreography. All of these adaptations unfold without spectacle. Each is simply the result of fungal life exploring the edges of possibility, adjusting itself to new challenges with patience and creativity. You have also followed spores into the atmosphere, rising through sunlit air until they joined the drifting particles that seed raindrops. From there you watch them shape mist, clouds, and the soft fall of rain through forests. Their journey revealed a gentle truth, that the sky is not separate from the living world below. Soil influences clouds, trees influence rainfall, and fungi, tiny, almost weightless, help draw the threads between earth and atmosphere, shaping weather in ways that remain nearly invisible. Fungi have accompanied humans as quiet companions for centuries. They help bread rise in warm kitchens. They ferment grains and fruits into food shared across countless cultures. They heal infections through medicines born from molds. They enrich soil for farmers, strengthen forests that supply air and water, and linger in the scents that drift through gardens after rain. They even live on skin, in homes and within bodies, forming communities that move through daily life with gentle familiarity. Throughout all these moments, fungi reveal a theme that runs quietly beneath the surface of the world: interconnectedness. Threads in the soil connect roots to one another. Spores drifting through clouds connect forests to sky. Enzymes breaking down organic matter connect past growth to future life. Even the fungal compounds that flavor food or heal illness connect human experience to the chemistry of organisms that most people rarely notice. It becomes clear that beneath every forest, garden, field and path lies a living architecture that never sleeps. Mycelium spreads through darkness, mending soil, guiding nutrients, and helping plants survive. It does not ask for attention, yet its work supports entire ecosystems. It does not rush, yet its influence unfolds across continents and centuries. It does not seek to be seen, yet it forms one of the most intricate structures on Earth, one that supports life in ways both subtle and profound. As you rest here, near the end of this journey, it is easy to imagine those networks spreading beneath your feet wherever you may be. The garden soil outside a window, the quiet forest you have walked through at some point in your life, even the fields that produce food, the parks in busy cities, and the wild spaces untouched by buildings or roads everywhere. The earth is threaded with fungal life, weaving together the living and the decaying, the growing and the fading, the visible and the unseen. There is a quiet beauty in recognizing that so much of the world depends on organisms that go unnoticed. Their work is gentle, patient, and endlessly hopeful. They show that strength does not always come from height or movement or noise. Sometimes it comes from persistence, from cooperation, from the slow unfurling of threads that join one life to another. In understanding fungi, you glimpse a softer way for the world to grow, through connection rather than division, through renewal rather than exhaustion, through steady cycles rather than sudden forces. As this exploration comes to a close, allow the feeling of interconnectedness to settle softly in your thoughts. Let the idea of hidden worlds, quiet, ancient, and endlessly creative, bring a sense of calm in the darkness beneath forests, in the air above mountains, in the soil of gardens, and in the quiet rooms where fermentation rises and bread warms. Fungi continue their work. They have been here long before us. They will remain long after. And in this moment, they offer a gentle reminder that life is full of invisible support, quietly holding the world together. For now, let yourself drift peacefully into stillness, carrying with you the quiet comfort of knowing that beneath every step, the earth is alive with threads of patient, enduring life.